All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fights. My name is Thinker St. James, and tonight we are going to be breaking down each and every fight from UFC Fight Night Dern versus Ribas 2. We'll be taking a look at UFC 311 coming up next week and going over a little bit of the end of Bellator as a brand. And to do all of that with me, as always, my co-host, my good friend, the Ohio player, and the man voted most likely to melt down in the Discord, Chase Parton. How you doing, brother?
You know, I'm a little better now. A good sleep and a rewatch just to reaffirm my thoughts, and then I held it all in for tonight, so I'm ready to go.
Well, right on. I know that there were a couple of things that were meltdown worthy, but what did you think about the card overall as a whole?
You know, it's kind of crazy because this card had a lot of finishes, but for some reason, and I will put it on the officiating, I think they killed the momentum of what was going to be a very epic card, in my opinion.
All right. Well, we'll definitely get into all of the shenanigans with officiating coming up, of course. If you are new to the stream, we're going to be breaking down each and every fight on this card. If you've got something that you want to talk about that's outside of the scope of what fight we're on at any given time, you can throw it in the chat. We'll come back to it at a later point. But let's get started here. On this card, again, this is UFC Fight Night Dern versus Ribas 2. This took place in Las Vegas, Nevada at the UFC Apex. And the first fight of the evening was Nurullo Aliyev versus Joe Solecki. Solecki coming in on 1 week notice. What'd you think?
I honestly, it didn't seem, okay, it was a wrestle heavy matchup. And I don't know if you noticed, but there was no significant strikes landed in the first round of this fight.
I did not see that, but I'm not surprised.
That is stats. But anyway, so Aliyev, he was okay. Like, the wrestling is solid, but like I said, there was nothing in the first round that either of them produced. I mean, that's not just his fault, of course, but I'm surprised they didn't start booing. Like, at least I didn't hear him start booing like right away. But this, whatever, he got it done, and shout out to him. Whatever.
Yeah,
Decision merchant incoming.
Yeah, most definitely that. They're probably not going to be booing too much at the Apex, I would think. A lot of
that is their families. Yeah. Hell, somebody's got to do it,
But we had talked about a little bit, I think, on the show about how they were expanding the Apex or doing some type of renovations or whatever. So theoretically, at least, we're be having more people in there at some point. You could have people booing, and if you have that, you're going to be hearing that bouncing off every wall, crack, and crevice in that place, because it is a tiny place and you hear every single thing going on. So yeah, that would be interesting. I agree pretty much. For the first fight of the year, essentially, as far as the UFC goes, it was a little bit of a slow one. Grappling from Aliyev was good, like you said. He did some nice work in there a couple of times. He got out of that second triangle attempt in the second round, like with the slam. I thought that was kind of cool, a little bit risky, but it worked out for him. Nice shot from Aliyev, dropped Solecki in the second round, which I wasn't expecting. So I guess he's got a little bit of hands there too. But at that point, and this is also something that I think I'll probably end up mentioning a couple times, is that Selecki's face was wide open. I think the theme of this card at certain points was wide open faces, because a couple of these, that didn't end up being a knockout, but a couple of them, it was like all the real estate in the world to land hands, and this was just one of those cases where that was apparent. But Aliv favors the left hand and got a few good shots off with it. I guess he's got a little bit of hands. I'd like to see him open up a little bit more, but when the wrestling is going as good as it was, the grappling was there as well. Selecki just ended up getting mopped pretty much with all of that, and that's really all there is to say about it. Respect to him for taking the fight on a week's notice, I guess.
Yeah, actually, what was that? He was the one that took it on short notice. Yes, that's what I thought too.
Yeah. I think he was coming in on short notice for this one.
Okay, right.
Yeah. That was.
Okay,
We had talked about it, but I forget who his original opponent was.
Asheville.
Oh, was this the Inala Schmooze one? Yeah, it
Yes.
was him and the one other one that, and I was forgetting which one was which, but yeah.
Yeah, what was I gonna say also? I mean, this is what you get when you just have, you have people who are pure boxers and they show up to the UFC. I mean, this is just what you get when you have like a pure wrestler. I mean, and again, shout out to him. I mean, he did get the win. It was unanimous. But I mean, gosh, he really didn't. He just wrestled. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess a couple other things you could say is that he's continuing to be undefeated, so that's nice to see. And he's also representing Tajikistan, which is a slightly less represented country in the sport. So, good for all of those reasons, I suppose.
I remember what I was gonna say. So you mentioned, way to start off the year. I kind of even forgot like this is the first fight of the year. Last year we got Josh Van, first fight. And he got a knockout on a dude later in the card. I mean, Dana was cooking last year. That's all I'm saying. Now we're off to a sloppy start with that one. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, I guess not every first one's going to be a firework, but thankfully the next fight was, I think, one that made up for it. So if you put the Aliyev versus Selecki fight to the side as, just kind of like an appetizer, just
Yeah,
a little small taste, just to get your
get
palate wet.
parking.
Yeah, right, exactly. You're settling in, you're making sure you got your popcorn and your snacks and all that kind of stuff. The next fight, I think, is the one that really kicked things off in a good way, and this was one that we were kind of hyping up, so I'm glad it lived up to it. This is Fatima Klein versus Victoria Dudikova. I want to reiterate here before we get too deep into the actual nuts and bolts of this fight that in Fatima Klein's debut, which was against Jasmine Jasdavicius, who has been doing her damn thing in the time that even since that fight and around that fight. I mean, she was on a win streak, I believe, going into that fight. Don't quote me on that one, but she had been doing good. Obviously, an established name in women's MMA at this point. That fight for Klein was on short notice and up a weight class.
At
So
elevation.
at elevation too, exactly. You're right. That was in Denver. So factor all of those things in. We were kind of hyping up Fatima Klein because she did really good in that fight. I think that this fight was exactly what we were hoping for.
Listen, if you are listening now, I will be breaking it down in the video later, but I'm just going to give it to you one by one as we go. So Fatima Klein, obviously coming in at number 1 at the end of the first week on the pound for pound list for women. She came in here. She got whatever she wanted. The grappling was so good. Like, okay, so at the first sequence, Dudikova, she got that like double leg up against the cage and Fatima switching the hips. And then it gets into scramble territory and you really see like Fatima, she's so much higher in the levels on the ground. She just floats with the position. Even Dudikova did like the Superman move with her legs, threw her up in the air at one point, and Fatima was not going anywhere. Then she gets in the full mount and she's landing elbows, not even to the point where it was like terrible nasty, like, oh my god, stop it. It was like, dude, Victoria Dudikova like gave up really. Like she honestly, I rewatched it this morning. I showed my father. And looking at the total strikes, 4 landed for Victoria Dudikova. This is a second round finish, by the way, guys, at the end of the second round. And she didn't even get elbows like rained on her, but Fatima was definitely about to start mauling her. She already was, but like it wasn't about to get as serious as it was if Victoria, would have kept going. But she gave up, in my opinion. And this was a perfect pick. Vegas knew what they were doing. That's all I'm saying.
Fair. I mean, well said. Coming into this fight, Charlie Arnold, the lovely roving reporter for the event, had said that Dudikova was going back to her base, really only focused on wrestling. She was really drilling her wrestling coming into this fight. That was extremely apparent. I mean, we're definitely talking up Fatima Klein. I think on the other side of the equation was Dudikova just seemed like she had a one-track mind and was not adjusting in the slightest, which I don't know what happened at the end of the fight. Maybe you can fill me in a little bit more. I saw the clip that was going around, but after the fight, apparently she was rather upset with one of her coaches. She had pushed him and said that he wasn't doing anything. So I don't know if there was some disconnect there with her camp or however that all went down, but it looked like Dudikova was woefully unprepared for what she was getting from Fatima Klein. And that really all goes to show everything that Chase just broke down, just that Fatima Klein was just so in her zone in this fight, navigated all of the wrestling. The scrambling was super effective, the elbows, everything that, really just backing up what Chase said.
I think it's crucial to note Victoria Dudikova came in at a plus 500 dog. It was honestly a lot more. Plus 700 is what, oh, plus 600, excuse me, is what Toby is going with.
Mm-hmm.
And, everybody said, that's good money. No way should she be that big of a dog. This is a close fight. And I knew what was happening. They are picking the pretty girl, whatever you want to say. Pretty privilege is getting you a lot. But on my book, if you come out here and get finished in a way where you're giving up and you look weak, you're not even at, I think there's 7 or 6 spots in the pound for pound list. You can't be 6 because somebody's going to lose, and they're going to lose better than you very, very soon. So Victoria Dudikova, she's definitely down. She's in 10 right now, but there's a lot of empty spots above her. So I'm just saying, she looked about as good as I thought she was against a very good opponent. But like I said, Fatima Klein, she just had all the answers. And there was one moment, it was real close in the clinch, and Victoria obviously didn't get in the clinch too much, head to head, standing, because Fatima hit her with 2 swift elbows, and she just dude, she was just all over the place, man. She is so impressive on the year 2025. Fatima Klein, anything's possible at 7-1 with all the skills. Holy shit, we're ready.
For sure, and that's what I wanted to touch on that a little bit too. When you're talking about the odds, I was saying that a lot of people were not wrong in thinking how they were thinking, that wow, that is a pretty big discrepancy there, a pretty wide line. However, I had small money on Fatima Klein coming into the Jazz Davicius fight based on what I had seen of her from pre-UFC. So I mean, if you do your homework on it, if you got to do a good amount of homework, you got to go pre-UFC, you got to be really searching this stuff out. But if you take a look at what she's already accomplished outside of the organization, it becomes pretty apparent that this is definitely a contender in the making, and has all of the makings of it. Like I said, anything is possible, and if they're wanting to shoot her up at this point, if the only loss that she has is against Jazz Davicius, who, like I said, is doing pretty well herself, then I would think that some pretty high rises are in her future. It goes back to what we were saying on the episode earlier about where the rankings are in the women's divisions. It's like a couple of good wins will get you in that conversation pretty quickly, especially if they're impressive. A TKO finish to start the year is certainly a way to do that.
It doesn't get better than that, I'm telling you. And the way she came on the mic, I'm really rooting for her. Like I was when she came in, shout out her. She's from New York, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And she got on the mic and she said that, after her first performance, she knew that she had better, and she wanted to get a finish for us. And she came out here and she backed it up. So I'm with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you could hear a little bit of that New York accent when she talks. I was like, oh, yeah. No, okay. I'm feeling
Yeah.
that. So, yeah. Nothing but good things to say about Fatima Klein. We'll see what she can do going forward. Hopefully, she gets booked again real soon because I
All
was
right.
enjoying that.
Yeah. All right. Off to, bad things now.
Yeah, this was the fight I would say was like the one real lull of the. I mean, you could say that the Aliv fight was not great. It at least had some decent scramble action going on. This fight was a serious snoozer, but it is what it is. This is Bruno Lopez versus Magomed Gadzhiesulov. Magomed Gadzhiesulov versus Bruno Lopez. Yeah, go ahead. What do you have to say?
Well, Bruno Lopez, I mean, he just decided to turn into Mario Batista is another one that I saw.
Yep.
And can you blame a guy who he is a Contender Series guy, right?
Correct.
And in any other situation, I think I would have a little less respect for it. But I think coming in as a dog and, you're trying to keep your place. Like, I mean, this is eat or be eaten. So, Gaji Zulov, I mean, I'm gonna hold you and I'm gonna get this dub off you. You're gonna take your L, and I'm gonna be on my way in the promotion. And now you got a stain on your reputation. Me, I'll move on because at the end of the day, it was a win. But did I enjoy watching it? No. I can't even tell you what happened in it other than them laying on the cage kind of deal.
It really was just wall install city for Lopez, man. I mean, very much meh is all I could say about it. The one thing that I had in the notes, aside from that, because there really are not very many, but Dom Cruz on commentary said that this performance was going to show the division that Lopez can wrestle, but he also has striking. I was like, what am I missing here? Because it was 100% cage clinching. I did not see a single hand being thrown. I don't believe a single one of these numbers. When they're saying that there were all of these significant strikes thrown on here, it's what we talk about plenty of times on this show about these numbers lying to us. I don't remember like a serious, like, we'll talk about a strike versus a significant strike. Show me some significance in anything that was happening there, because it was, again, wall and stall city. This dude was putting up walls left and right with his body. In fact, on the watch along that I was doing with Vitz King, shout out to the Vitz King, we were sitting there, and at one point we were kind of analyzing Lopez's back tattoo, because he's got like a skull, and then it also has like a landscape kind of thing that's in the shape of a face. It's an interesting thing to look at, and the reason we were able to do that was because we were looking at so fucking much of his goddamn back.
That's actually one thing that I will note. If you're going to note anything, is that Gaji Azulov cannot get the underhook and turn the opponent. Like, he was against the cage all 9 of these minutes. Listen, 14 seconds, that sounds about right, because he didn't get Bruno off him and flip the position. He didn't circle out. He didn't find a way to, knee and then move elbow on the escape. Like, he didn't do anything. He just accepted it, kept looking at the clock. And I get you're a striker, brother, but like, you're not even on the ground yet. Like, if this is what's tripping you up and you're just in fucking the void, like,
True.
you are in a big heap of trouble.
Yeah. And I mean, because there's really not too, I mean, unanimous decision win for Lopez, I guess, is the way to close it out. And since there's not too much else to say, I did want to say shout out to Henry, sending some love. Appreciate you, brother. And wanted also to highlight Toby's comment here. Clinching against the cage, those strikes do count. Marab will tell you so. So, I mean, I guess that there is something to be said for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where that one will end. Let's move on. This fight was a better one. This was a pretty spirited one here, and I wanted to call back to last week because you corrected me. Yet I've heard 17 different pronunciations of this name, so you can pronounce it how you want, and I'll try myself as well here.
They added the extra T at the end this time. Keretskate.
Yeah. Like, so Ernesta Karaskate or Karaskate. There's a couple of different ways, but Ernesta, as Vitz King was saying, karate misspelled. Ernesta Karaskate versus Nicole Cagliari. I like this fight. I was happy with this one. I thought this was a pretty spirited competition between these two women, especially with Cagliari coming in off the Contender Series, as we had previewed. Her fight there was a lot less competitive, so I think that this was a nice welcome to the UFC, and it also showed that she did deserve to be there, even with her losing the fight.
I want to give some context. So, me and shout out Elite in the Discord, we rewatched both of the Contender Series matchups. I don't know why we didn't watch Ernesta's UFC debut. Now that I think about it, we were flawed in this because Ernesta was pretty good in her Contender Series debut. And also shout out Carly Judice, because that was a great matchup, great war. Anyway, then we also watched Nicole Cagliari, and what I saw was not great striking. I was like, okay, striking is oof. Like, Ernesta might be able to dog walk her the entire time if she's not able to, actually throw a good combination getting off the cage or whatever. And then she also had some hip tosses to a 5'3" woman, also like her. I predicted very correctly Ernesta's going to be way too tall for the takedowns to be very consistent for Cagliari. She's going to be able to stilt her way and, hobble out of them. And it was a great effort by Cagliari for the first time ever going to the bell. I will give her this. A split decision war is not too bad against Ernesta Skate, my girl who is a striking queen. She comes in like Sean Woodson. I'm telling you, this is who you're watching in the women's division. Lithuania, I wish my flag was here. I got it. I bought it for you, Miss Ernesta. You're just amazing, and I love everything you do. It's not going to last forever because you're always going to decision, but it's always going to be a good performance. And if you were a dude, they'd probably give you performance of the night one of these days.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been my note about it, is that I really like Ernesta's striking. I mean, it is some clean boxing.
She gets bopped a lot, though. I'll tell
That
you
and
that.
that would be the other side of it. It's twofold. It's one, she does get touched a good amount, and then two is that it just doesn't seem that she has the power in her hands. She's very much volume, which is great because it really does. It looks nice, and it's fun to watch. But with the amount of striking that she does, it would be nice to see her like be able to finish on the feet sometime. And that, as always, when it comes to women, is something that will absolutely set you apart. If you can finish on the feet as a woman in this sport, you are going to instantly catapult yourself to a different stratosphere than the rest of the competition. So, I mean, I do agree that. That all of those things are as they are. Cagliari came out really aggressively in the first round. I think it almost worked a little bit against her towards the end, even though she didn't look like she was gassed. It just more looked like she didn't know how to navigate it. That would have been the way that I took it when I rewatched it myself. I was saying that she had a pretty solid like focused strategy early on that I think caught Ernesta off guard a little bit, because it took Ernesta a little time to find her rhythm, get into the swing of the fight. But by round two, she was already there, and then Cagliari just couldn't get her own adjustments off, so to speak.
I think what's also to note is that if you look back to UFC Macau and you look at Dr. Sleep Shiming, what she was able to do with this height disadvantage, and say, similar thing, like they were striking and they were both getting touched and things were landing, but she was able to eventually set something up that got, her opponent thinking, and then she was able to, get a clean shot off something else. I don't remember if Cagliari was throwing many high kicks. It's very hard when you're someone built like she is. I mean, she's like a fire hydrant, and shout out to her. She's a good looking woman. But, if that's my takeaway, it's like she's got to, the decision is not going to always go your way. You're going to have to figure out how to get it done. Grappling is always going to be on point, but the striking she showed now, I mean, hell, I mean, I give her some props. Ernesta's a pretty tough girl.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's why I was saying I really think that this was a pretty good fight on both sides. It certainly was not one of those ones where you see him come in off the Contender Series and you're like, "Ooh, this is not gonna go well in the big leagues." Like, I thought Cagliari proved that she belongs in the organization. One other note for Ernesta that I would have, and actually, I guess it kind of goes on both sides, is that for such a tall woman, Ernesta needs to kick more, bro. She needs to use that length. She's got long arms too, so like the striking at range also works out in her favor. Whenever she's able to negate the clinch, get herself back out to distance, she can throw from a pretty good, solid ranged attack. But the kicks just were few and far between. I would think that she should be spamming some of those and going low on a couple more of those too. Like, on the other side of that, Cagliari needs to, and I think that this is probably just going to come from experience. Cagliari needs to know that she needs to start chopping those legs down herself. I mean, that, if you're not able to get what you want out of the clinches, then you need to start going to the legs and start getting her weakened up. And then you'll have more ability thereafter when she's in a more compromised state. She sort of went in kind of bullishly trying to get the clinch and get her to the ground and all that. When it wasn't working, that's what I was talking about earlier. It's like, okay, you need to adjust a little bit in your go forward strategy. And I think that the legs would have been a good way to adjust there.
I know I've talked about Cagliari a lot, and I'm actually going to give her one last prop after I say Ernesta. She's just a beast. Like, that's really the last thing I have to say about her. But Cagliari, what she did show, and I think it's important going forward. And I follow her on Instagram, and she's been talking, through the fight week, and she had no fear whatsoever. Like, she was ready to go in here, and I'm gonna get another finish. And if she didn't even do that, I know she got to the bell though, and she was still in the fight. I give her major, major props. I know the Contender Series raises dogs, but she's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, split decision win for your first time, or split decision loss rather, for your first time out is certainly nothing to sneeze at. So I think that this was a good showing for her. And
Learning curve.
yeah, exactly, absolutely. I mean, you're learning on the job every time you're in the cage, and so was Ernesto to an extent. I mean, she did what she needed to do, and there are probably a couple adjustments that she can make as well. I think if she can somehow muster a little bit more power in the hands, then that striking is going to really pay a lot more dividends and get those kicks in there too. And that's really all she needs to do.
True. Yeah. I wish it would kick more.
Yeah, yeah, but well, we'll see. Maybe that's the adjustment for next fight. Speaking of next fight, another Contender Series alum coming in and making our job pretty easy over here. This is Jacoby Smith versus Preston Parsons. I want to give a quick shout out to a dude who's also in the chat right now named Toby, who convinced me to go in on the first round knockout. Very rare do I ever go for the props to that extent. Actually, I think it was just Jacoby Smith by knockout. I didn't go for the round one, but I was like, you know what, Jacoby Smith by knockout, you're really confident in it. I obviously saw him on the Contender Series. I knew he was a bit of a beast. Went in on that. That was one of the bets that paid. And again, this was one of those ones where the walkout was longer than the fight. So easy night for us when it comes to this one. What do you think?
Yeah, this one in replay, it actually wasn't as devastating. Like it was a nasty knockout, but like honestly, like I remember at the night, like he killed Preston Parsons. Like Preston Parsons was like lifeless after this shot. But in upon replay, like he was out. Like it was definitely a good stoppage. But like I don't um I don't personally feel it was as bad as I was gassing it the first time. Not to say that it wasn't a great knockout. This is obviously contender for knockout of the year. I mean, it's top 5. So, um, shout out to Jacoby Smith. And yeah, he's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens because he's built, he's kind of built like Chris Curtis, like at this weight, like that's exactly who he's built like. So it's gonna be interesting. He's way more light on his feet, athletic, like a younger, probably what Chris Curtis maybe looked like in his heyday, kind of deal.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as we always say with knockouts that are this quick, and probably one of the reasons that you were hyping it up so much was because it was the first like real knockout. I mean, it was like the first lights out kind of knockout of the year. So shout out to him for having that to his credit. But what we say about these kinds of fights is that it's a little bit hard to gauge the fullness of the fighter. There weren't any situations that he was in any kind of real danger. We didn't have to see him go to the ground at all. But to that point, they were talking up a lot of his credits as a wrestler. So the guy is obviously pretty well rounded, at least on paper. We'll see what his next matchup looks like. The next guy that he has to go up against maybe gets him into some deeper waters. We'll get a better assessment of the overall picture. But, that's certainly something that'll prop up the highlight reel real early on. Your first night out in the organization, getting a very, very quick knockout. I think it was in the 26-second range, or no, that was the Punahele Soriano knockout. This one might have been what did they say here? A minute 13. So I mean, not too much farther off.
Yeah, it was definitely pretty good. He also, and I will say this is subtle. I don't know if his intention was to do this. Maybe it was. His little gimmick at the end where he like flopped, that kind of went viral. I mean, that's adding to his mantra, he's going to be a popular guy maybe if he keeps doing some fun stuff every time he actually, comes through.
Yeah, he launched himself backwards like he had just gotten off of a landmine.
Yeah.
He went backwards, up and over, went all the way to the cage. He's yelling at everybody. Yeah, no, I mean, it was good to see. I think that he's definitely a guy to keep your eye on. These new waves every year, Contender Series. You get some people that are going to drop off, that aren't going to really prove themselves, and then sometimes, and more often as time goes on, you get people that are really making names for themselves early. So keep your eye on Jacoby Smith.
Well, I want to say, shout out to the Flow Man. Give a
Yes.
big shout out to him for stopping by. But I want to say what is most impressive to me about Jacoby Smith and what he was able to do. Yeah, the way that he's calculating his shots, but I think the way he darts in and he's leading with like a 1, 2, 3, like kind of like how Khalil leads with that. He leads like a little flurry in the front, but then he's able to dart back out. Like Jacoby Smith, very athletic. I mean, that's going to get him far as it is. Like once you're a genetic freak, I mean, you could do a lot of stuff, determination and preparation. You'll be good after that.
Yeah, and you make a good point about his movement in general because he is fighting at welterweight, which is right at the cusp of where, people start to be a little bit slower, I would say. Like, that you don't see like I mean, you do at welterweight, but I'm saying like that's really like the point where like the guys start to be they're carrying more weight on their body, so they're not moving as quickly. But he is certainly a very agile welterweight, so
Yeah,
that's going to definitely pay dividends for him as well. And he's already knocking on the door of Bilal, or at least he was, in his post fight was. So we'll see what he can do to get himself towards that. I think it's a little ways off, but you never know.
100%. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Good knockout for Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith goes to Vegas. All right, moving on. Tiago Moises versus Trey Ogden. This was one that I was a little disappointed by. I thought that Ogden, he's a guy that has been sneaky with his subs in the past. There's kind of potential for him to do some stuff that might be unexpected, and was not able to get that going. But there were also some injuries on his side. Some that came from the fight specifically, and then I guess all of them came from the fight, but like some that were a little bit more anticipated than others. What do you think of this fight?
I think this is the first part of where I knew I had so this and another person, we'll talk about him later, but I knew they were gonna get their redemption. This is gonna be where they had a slight fall off last fight, doing dumb shit. Then they come back and get a win. I wouldn't say this is a big win because Tiago Moises, I don't know, dude. He's just too timid. Like he fights like he doesn't like to hurt people. Like the way that he, basically crippled Trey Ogden and then just kept kicking his legs or something. I forget what he ended up doing. It's like, why aren't you standing up and then kicking his legs more? Like he just didn't want to end it. And I've seen him get leg kick TKOs. Like he's done it once, maybe twice in another promotion. I don't know. But this one, like he could have got a finish here. I'm grateful he didn't. I'm not saying I didn't have money on the decision, but it would have been nice for Tiago to come out here and get a finish in a big way, on that redemption arc. Not, oh, here goes Tiago Moises, another fucking unanimous decision, you know. And he got outstruck. Now that I'm looking at this, what are these numbers? Like, holy shit.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, well, that just is mostly, I think, off the fact that that first round was just such a point fest. I mean, it was really like a hard spar in that first round. They were just pointing each other back and forth. It really was just like an I go, you go kind of thing, just back and forth, back and forth. And then, round two was when it started to add up a little bit more quickly because that leg was getting battered and started to pay some dividends. Ogden goes down, goes to his back off leg kicks there. And it got to the point where I was kind of wondering if Ogden was going to be able to be on his feet coming back out for the third round. He was. So, I mean, that all worked out. But then, third round, Moises did some nice work on the ground, got the elbows, opened up Ogden, on the side of the face, like pretty much all on one side. He'd gotten pretty cut up down the, I believe it was the left side of his face. And that just worked for him. But you're right. I mean, it wasn't like fireworks when it probably could have been fireworks.
Yeah, and I think Flowman is making some great points. Like he is one stiff. I don't know what that is about. I think again he's just like nervous or he's timid, doesn't want to hurt people. Takes too long. I don't know what that is about. Like he's like it's like he's trying to program a great counter, but then by the end he just ends up being the person leading the exchange. It's like what are you getting punched for so many times if you're not gonna like start capitalizing on those like rhythms or like those strikes. I don't know what about his like game plan is like wrong, but it just feels wrong. Like he's not. If you're gonna take the first round off, like okay, sure, and then if you're gonna like go the second round and almost finish him, why are you letting the round end where he can now like walk in the third and then still not like then you're going into the ground in the third round? Like I don't know, man.
No, I think that you kind of nailed it with the rhythm. It's like he gains a rhythm early in the fight, but then does not increase the tempo. You know what I mean? Like it's like he's got a very slow and steady kind of approach to it, but it's like, okay, now that you've got that off and things are starting to go in your favor, it's like turn up the BPMs a little bit here. Like let's get the rotations going a little bit faster, but he just doesn't do that. So
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, that's an unfortunate thing as far as like going out there and being dominant, but I guess it is what it is. A win's a win to some people.
Yeah, but I mean, we talk about needle movers.
Right.
You want to talk about a big comeback. You're somebody who's watching Thiago Moises. Like, this is a fight where it's like you pick up your phone and it's like, all right, well, let's figure out who won because I probably didn't watch the rest of it, kind of deal. At least the casual viewer. I obviously was watching, but this doesn't make you say Thiago Moises is a lock next fight for sure. Like, it's just like, all right, we'll see if he can beat, I don't know, like fucking any trash lightweight. Like, I don't know.
Well, right. I mean, and that's really what it does signal is like, what's the matchmaking going to look like? Like, what kind of fight can we expect on the other side because we know what we're getting on this side?
Yeah, it's
So,
it's I don't know. I mean, like I said, it was a good performance because I was interested in him winning by decision. Other than that, I can't say too much.
yeah. And the other injury that I had kind of alluded to at the beginning of this little breakdown is Ogden tore his bicep somewhere in there. And that did not look pleasant after the fight. You could see it was the way that Dom described it. It had like kind of shot up and sort of shriveled in his arm. And he was crooking that thing pretty noticeably as the decision was being read. So hopefully Trey Ogden will heal up soon.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's move on to Marco Tulio versus Ihor Potieria. Of course, Potieria was one of two fighters that missed weight, so already a ding against him there. But this guy, Ihor, cannot catch a damn break when it comes to fouls, my guy. What the hell is going on? This dude is a foul magnet for some
Uh,
reason.
well, I'm glad you bring it up, and I can tell you why. I saw a tweet, and it was like, Ihor's last Brazilian opponents, whatever. And ever since he danced on Shogun, they've really had it out for him. And I'm not gonna lie,
Mm.
it makes sense. Like, if you're a Brazilian MMA fighter, that's like God to you. It's like, why would you can't disrespect a legend. Like, I'm coming in here and listen, if you get poked, you get poked. If you get kicked, you get kicked. I mean, that's not on me. It's a little dirty, but it's not necessarily like it's maybe more unwritten rules that they're just kind of bypassing.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, whatever the case is, whether it's intentional, unintentional, or otherwise, the fouls definitely did cast a slight shadow on an otherwise fantastic knockout for Marco Tulio over here. I mean, it went from head clash to nut shot to Potieria getting dropped. He tries his damnedest to stay in this thing. I mean, he was certainly trying, and it does suck when you take all that time to adjust because it was after the cup check, which was a pretty good one too. If you saw that, I mean, it was pretty right on the money. Just knee straight up the middle, almost like when a chick is mad at you, kind of thing. Like going in for the hug and getting kneed in the nuts is pretty much what it looked like to me. But Potieria tried to stay with it, but Tulio swarmed nicely. And fouls aside, I mean, Tulio lived up to what I was hoping. Tulio, of course, another Contender Series guy, and as I had mentioned, he was he was the dude who got that spinning back kick knockout, TKO to the body on the Contender Series. And I think we had talked about it back during the Contender Series when we were doing those recaps, but he was on the Contender Series twice and won both fights. So I guess just the first one wasn't impressive enough. Second one certainly was, and a knockout here, a TKO here for Tulio is certainly a good sign coming into the promotion. I think he's matured well, aside from the fouls.
Yeah, to be honest, you actually make great points. He should probably have his trunks in the rafters of the Apex, just like Torres Finney. But aside from that, I want to talk about the knockout specifically because it was now while Ihor does try very, very hard, and you can tell like he has like that fighter spirit. Like even he'll get a clean shot and he'll do the Nate Diaz like, ooh, gotcha, like ooh, like and you can tell that he's in it. Like anytime he fights, like he is there to make money. That's what he does. But he got clipped originally. And then Tulio was able to just turn, pivot, and then clock him again. And then so he kind of like falls down and he's like trying to get up. And then Tulio hits him with like an under the arm uppercut and it just bobs him. He falls face first and then he hits him again. And then Ihor, this is what I wanted to talk about mainly. The way that he flips over, takes his mouthpiece out, and like just the look on his face. Not only did he lose, but like I can just feel it's like, I've lost so many times. There's no way I'm gonna be in another fight in the UFC now. Like, and I'm not saying that, and I'm laughing because it is funny to say as me watching it because you just got knocked out on UFC primetime TV, whatever you want to say. But like, I feel bad for the dude because like this is what you do. This is how you feed your family. And you just can't catch a break. Like, you are just getting put up against some real deal killers. Like, dude, like, fuck.
Yeah, well, and I mean, when it comes to that, I don't want to get too deep into the personal stuff, but am I right that Ihor was the one that ended up taking away Cheyenne Bays from JP? I think we talked about that at one point. So not only feeding your family, feeding other people's families,
Yeah,
perhaps. But
nice.
anyway, I digress. I digress. But no, I mean, yeah. Look, respect to everybody that makes the walk, obviously, and I mean. Potieria has had his wins in the past, but this is certainly a troubling time for him. This is now at least 2 in a row, right? I mean, was he on a 2-fight losing streak before that, or 4 in a row? Yeah, I mean, then
I think it's 4, man.
is
I
that
think
the
it's 4.
case? Is that the case?
Okay,
Come on,
3
bro.
with a win and then another like,
Yeah,
yeah, I
he
mean,
he's 1-4 in his last 5. That
well,
is
I mean,
not good.
as Toby just said, 1 and 6 just retired. So, I mean,
I mean that's certainly not a great place to be at this point. Yeah, and really the other part of it that we often talk about on this show is that like he's also not a guy that has a lot of like hype
star
around him.
power, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't create his own narrative in that regard either. So
He's a
there
Ukrainian fighter, man,
I
like,
there's got to be somebody else from Kiev they can send over, man. I know that they're fighting a war over there, but there are other options. I promise you, it's a tough country with tough people. But yeah, so it's looking like the sun might be setting on Ihor Potieria in the UFC, perhaps, and rising for Marco Tulio. As I said, I mean, I like the way that he fights aside from the Fowley stuff. I mean, like he's very composed, he's very powerful, obviously, and his technicality is pretty good too. I mean, like he throws punches. They were talking about that a little on commentary. He's a Shudo box guy. They set their punches up from like a mile away. And sometimes it feels like you are way, way reaching for these shots, thinking that you're going to get those to land. And then somehow a lot of these guys do. He's got a good build for that. He's got really long arms. He uses the space very well. So I mean, I really like. I see the same flex of him that I saw in the Contender Series. He just needs to make sure that these fouls get under control and stop leading with your motherfucking fingers, my guy, please, because it is dumb shit to get point deductions because you've got your fingers out. Just close your damn fist, bro. I understand you're trying to gauge distance, you're trying to grab hands and put and push to the side and stuff like that. Be smart about it, because it is really, really dumb to have this kind of a shadow cast over an otherwise a performance that we wouldn't have had to say any of that about.
I will say this. You might be very confident, but the law of averages, Cesar Almeida is doing very good after he finished Ihor Potieria. Michel Pereira, we're starting to slip. Marco Tulio, I'm just saying, are the odds going to be in his favor? I don't know, but the numbers do not lie. We will find out eventually if people who beat Ihor Potieria will become very, very good. Rodolfo Bellato, I don't believe so. I haven't even seen him since. I don't think so. We'll see.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, yeah, time shall tell, I suppose, but I guess it also will tell if we see Potieria at all again, because like we were saying, the future's looking a little grim for him. But either way, nice job for Mr. Tulio.
100%.
Yeah. All right, moving on to this fight here. This is a fight that I am rather upset about myself, because for the same reasons, I think, that I saw Mr. Chase Barton a little upset about in the Discord. I don't know if it was about this fight specifically, but I believe I saw in the Discord that you were saying that you were a little upset that you were listening to some people feeding you information that you didn't necessarily agree with. And this is one where I should have stuck with my goddamn gut the way that I was talking it on the show last week, should have stayed where I was feeling it. This is Felipe Bunes versus Jose Johnson. And of course, Johnson is the other person that missed weight, by the way. But go ahead and give your thoughts here, Chase.
I think I'll start by saying, to be fair, these are both dudes with shit records. So could we expect much? It's a coin flip at best. I don't care what the numbers did show that, I guess, kind of. But Jose Johnson, you kind of are embarrassing. Like, I don't even know, because one, you did decent. Was it Jose Johnson that faced Asu Amabayev? Let me double check. Yes,
yeah,
you did decent against Asu Amabayev. You made it to the bell and you didn't get subbed. But then this guy, Oh my god, I was talking shit too, and I feel bad every time I take my L. That's okay. I'll remember Felipe now, but Jose Johnson, you need to fall off the map. Something's got
That's
to change.
That's exactly what I had been saying when I found out that he missed weight. I was like, this dude is probably going to be needing to find a different line of work. There's somebody was saying, "Oh, he needs to move up a weight class." I'm like, no, he needs to go and be a carpenter or something, bro. Like I just it's what I had said last week. He is tall for nothing. And that was what is annoying to me about him in general. It's not like, look, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I got nothing personally against the guy. Although I do think that his showboating is a little bit bullshit when that kind of thing is going to happen to him. Of course, he was submitted in the first round here, if you're not aware. But the thing that bothers me about him is the way that he is spoken about, because yes, he is a 6 foot flyweight. That is an anomaly. That is something that you don't see every day for sure. What do you do with it? What makes that any kind of worth? Where is the value in that if you are not going to be out there using it to your advantage? Because that was what I had said about him in the last fight, is that he's got all of this height and doesn't utilize it in an effective way. This time, I mean, you could say that he had a couple of decent, I think he had like a kick or two and a nice uppercut early in the round. Right, exactly. But it's eye rolly stuff. So it's like, you're trying to grasp at straws to give any kind of accolades when he fucking ends up getting taken down. I mean, like, oh, he rolled through it at first. That's nice, but he didn't get out of the armbar. So there's really not much to say positive about Jose Johnson, in my opinion, aside from, yeah, he's the tall flyweight.
I think it's the same deal. So when I'm trying to think of a good example, Cheeto Vera, it's a great example. Anytime Cheeto Vera fights, you'll get on Twitter and you'll see highlight clips of him doing elbows and knocking out Sugar Sean and doing crazy stuff. And you buy the hype. You're like, oh, okay, he's done it before. He's done something great. Jose Johnson, he don't even get that. They just post the picture of him in the UFC uniform, and it's like 6 foot demon flyweight. It's like I bought into it. Listen. I'm not gonna say I'm the smartest man alive, because what can you do? A sucker's born every second, and I was one of them. Because Jose Johnson, you didn't just take me of my entertainment. You took me of time that I could have done anything else. I couldn't have watched your highlight tapes probably, because there's probably none. So it's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what I was getting at earlier too, is that I feel like a bit of a sucker myself for having listened to anybody who said that no, Jose Johnson's not that bad. Give him the shot in this fight. Should have stuck to my guns. I do give him a little bit of credit, just the slightest bit, for having the wherewithal to do the wall walking that he did when the initial armbar position was secured, but then he wasn't able to get out of it. And that goes to Bunis's credit for being able to stick with it through all of the little scramble that was going on there, to an extent anyway. I mean, it wasn't a true scramble, but better for on Bunis's side that he was able to hold on to it, got the position that he finally wanted, and had a very fierce Dragon Ball Z celebration at the end of it. So shout out for that,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, what I will lastly note, since we are going to talk about Felipe just a moment, and I will give him his props. Shout out you. But, in my book, you've only fought twice, once every beginning of the year. I don't know why. But you got knocked out in your first performance. You got a sub in this one. By my calculations, you're like a +1 in my book. I don't love you. You're not a +10, but you're coming around. You get another win. Maybe it's a finish again. I'm not going to get too hopeful, because you on the feet is very questionable. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on this point as well. Flowman saying that Jose would be better at bantamweight or up farther than that. I mean, you say that because of the size and the additional weight he would be taking on, but you got to recognize that the killers that he would be facing in those divisions would mop him as well, I would think. I mean, I didn't see anything that jumped out to me like, oh, if he only had more weight on his frame, then everything could be totally different. You know what I mean? I think that he will scale. I think he's just going to scale up if he goes up in weight personally. So I don't really buy it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that he has a great advantage that he doesn't use. If he went up a weight, he wouldn't have an advantage, and he also wouldn't do anything. So I don't
Right.
know.
Exactly. That's the deal. That's what I'm talking about. So Any which way. All right, let's move on from the the pile on Jose Johnson here.
Yeah,
Back
true.
to another quick one, though. I mean, not too much to say about this one. This was even quicker than the previous. This is Punahele Soriano versus Uros Medic. I mean, I was with you, Chase, when we were talking about this one, saying that Medic had looked pretty good in some of his earlier fights. I was kind of riding with him, but Punahele Soriano coming out and getting the job done in 31 seconds, my guy.
Yeah, this one was tough. I mean, it was a quick one, like you said. 31 seconds is pretty crazy. What is also pretty crazy is Punahele's celebration after the fact. That was pretty nuts. Everybody's trying to make a moment now. That's what I'm getting. 2025 is the viral moment. Everybody saw the so
Yep.
they
Yep.
gotta do theirs. Anyway, so Medic coming in, I know this dude as an elite striker, like elite. Talking about elite, shout out elite in the chat. He is just so good at striking, but wow, did he get caught? And it's actually kind of crazy. Like it actually was one of those moments where he just got caught. Like he's dipping back, gets hit the other way, and just the lights shut off, body goes stiff. It has actually is kind of interesting how bodies sometimes will go limp or sometimes they'll go stiff. I don't know. That's just something I'll point out right there because he went stiff as a board, and then he was kind of there. The ref let it go for a minute, but then they didn't ever. I rewatched it with my dad. They didn't have a good angle of those last final shots. I kept trying to, but no, those last final shots did the trick. So shout out Punahele.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned his celebration. His post-fight push-ups lasted longer than the fight itself. I
True.
mean, this dude was doing 25 at least. I mean, he kept going with the push-ups. But no, you're exactly right about the knockout itself. Medic was on the back foot, retreating from strikes, but the strikes kept pressure forward. I mean, that was the real credit to Soriano for, he wasn't throwing one. I mean, he saw that he had him on the back foot and said, okay, if you're going back, I'm going to go with you. It actually reminded me a little bit of Robelis Despain's knockout in the first fight that he had that made everybody a believer until they weren't. But, it's the same type of situation where it's like dude's going back, back, back. Well, I'm going to go forward, forward, forward. And that's exactly what it was. This is another example on the evening of the wide open faces that I was talking about, because it was, like you said, he got caught, but that was really because it was just right place, right time for him to get caught. Had Punahele Soriano not been using the distance as well as he would have, or as well as he had, he would not have been in that position, but he used those long arms and made it work for him. So I think that it was a good example of why you should, if you're going to be a pressure fighter, if you're going to be pushing the pace, that you need to also back it up with the strikes as opposed to being in front of a guy and taking pictures, as DC would say.
Yeah, guys, going up against an Islander. I mean, I know he's, from the United States, but he's an Islander and they're just hard to listen. If it's a striking battle and you're coming in as a dog, I mean, a little money ain't going to hurt you. If you're betting on Victoria Dudakova and not Punahele's, what are you doing? So that's
Yeah,
crazy.
absolutely. And I believe he said that him and his wife are expecting their, I think he said it was his first child.
I believe so.
So there you go. Congratulations to him and the missus, expecting a little one. And like you
And
said, a
will
little,
like to fight again in
yeah,
March.
there you go. So, I mean, a little bit of money does not hurt in that situation as well. So hopefully he keeps that rolling, because you got a knockout like that. That's another highlight reel worthy one. And if he can keep that momentum, then big things in the future, perhaps.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, tearing through this one because of all these knockouts, but the next one did not have one of those. This was Christian Rodriguez versus Austin Bashi, the prospect killer. They're starting to call Christian Rodriguez. What are you thinking here?
I don't think they're starting to kill him. I mean, you earn your nickname, you earn your name. And Christian Rodriguez is definitely earning his name in the sport. I don't know what that last matchup is. He's one of these dudes where it's like you give him an incentive and not necessarily money. He comes in here with, a grudge on these new kids. Like, I'm the one to stop you. Oh yeah, I can show you something you've never seen. And Bashi, credit to him again, coming off the Contender Series, going to the bell when you're somebody who normally is getting finishes all your career. It's impressive. It actually shows how good the coaching is for a lot of different areas. They're getting them prepared for war. Um, And Christian Rodriguez, he was just able, and I think this is mostly what it was. He was just able to spook him. He like there was moments where he was just fainting and jumping, hitting the mat with and Bashi just looked like some experience was needed. Let me feel comfortable that I am an MMA fighter and not this dude going up against an MMA like not an MMA but a UFC fighter for
Right.
lack of a better term.
Absolutely. No, most definitely. On the watch along, we were saying it was really a big brothering situation, especially with the mat stomps, which I
Yeah.
thought were great. That kind of thing is like money to me. Like I forget who it was. I got to go back and rewatch the show and see which one it was. But there was the one dude. He was fighting one of the Road to the UFC guys, and he was pointing to the ground as like a misdirect, and I was like, things like that, those are those little small details sometimes that can make a difference if you're really in your zone. Rodriguez is a guy that, having taken out several at this point, debuting fighters, these guys who are these hot prospects that people have their eyes on, it's like he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and I guess warranted in these circumstances. Why not? I mean, Bashi's wrestling was very nice. I'll give him credit there. He just couldn't do enough with it, and the amount that he went back to the well did signal to me that he might be a little lacking in confidence when it comes to his striking. There was not too many times where he had the wherewithal to say, okay, this is not working. I need to break off and start trying to throw some hands. If you have confidence in your hands, that's going to be a lot more of something that will easily spring to mind. That's going to come to you a lot quicker in those kinds of exchanges, especially when we're getting into the third round and you're still trying to go in for the takedowns. It's just, bro, I mean, it hasn't worked through two. Through three, you really should be trying something else. Rodriguez just one step ahead.
Yeah, I think the big brother assessment is perfect because anytime the grappling actually did get to the ground, Rodriguez, like he had this demeanor that like you're not gonna even get me in the situation. Like I'm good. Like I'm just gonna float. I'm gonna get out of any situation you got. I'm gonna flip off people in the crowd. I don't know if you saw that part. That was pretty funny.
I
In
did
in
not. That's
in in mid clinch, he's just flipping the dude off in the crowd. So
I did not see that. That is
yeah.
funny.
Yeah, so like it's just I don't want to stretch too far, but it's kind of like again, I think I said Nate Diaz already with another fighter, but like it's kind of like that mentality. Like I just don't give a shit. Like I'm gonna beat who you think I'm not gonna beat, and then I'm gonna lose everybody money on a fight that I'm gonna throw because I'll get an undefeated prospect the next fight.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was brought up on the watch along, and somebody in the chat was saying like, why is it that he's consistently the guy that's getting these newcomers? And I mean, I guess that the answer to that is because A, he's really a good introductory point for a lot of these guys, and B, in the one time that he did get shot up a little bit farther, that was the one loss that he has in recent memory. I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's
Julian Erosa.
yeah, and right. He's 4-1 in his last five, and
Subs
Julian
like
Erosa.
chicken. I forgot about that in the first fucking round. Oh
There
my
you go.
god.
So I mean, like it's one of those deals that's I think really the point with that line of dialogue is that like it's a hard position for Rodriguez to an extent because on the one hand he's doing such good work against these guys that are coming in with a lot of hype behind them, so it's like there is a name there. He's done it now 4 times in a row, it feels like. But on the other side of the coin, it's like, okay, you can do that against these new guys, but you got to be able to do it against the vets too, or this is what you're going to continue to be. So we'll have to see if he's able to make some adjustments against some of the more veteran fighters in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot actually the extent of his last matchup. I don't know why he went in there and tapped right away. That is absolutely insane because when you watch a performance like this, it makes you question like this dude is like really good. Like why is he fighting somebody like this? Like how is he not exceeded past this? Isn't this too hard of a test for some people? Raul Rosas, I don't believe so. That's just one I'll say. But this one, it's like maybe Christian Rodriguez is elevated to the point where this is a little unfair kind of deal because it wasn't hard for him at all. He can just show up on an off day, miss weight, eat cheeseburgers, and come in here and just fuck some shit up, like for everybody. Came in on a dog today, like on Saturday, and like did
Yeah,
his
but
thing.
he needs to be able to do that against guys that have been around.
Yeah, and if he can't, what is that? Just the middle of the road? Maybe not even. That's like lower middle of the road kind of deal
Yeah,
players.
for sure. And I mean, the last note from Rodriguez's side that I had was just that he was actually willing to strike and did some decent striking when he was throwing. Got a really nice sneaky knee in there as well. I thought that was pretty good. And when it came to the roll throughs that he was doing when he had to do some evasive stuff, thought he used his body weight really effectively too. So again, when it comes to the situation that we just outlined, that's what you're going to get from Rodriguez there. He needs to be able to do it against some of these higher guys, or as Chase said, he's going to end up being a middler. And, it doesn't have to be that way. So
Yeah.
hopefully he can make those adjustments
Yeah, I mean, all the skills are there. It literally is just a motivation thing. It
for
seems
sure.
like. Seems like. I don't know the guy, so
Right, right. All right. Well, let's move it on to. I think I said it on the last episode that this was the people's main event, and I think it certainly lived up to that assessment. This is Roman Kopylov versus Chris Curtis. Of course, a little bit of controversy in the way that this concluded. What did you think of this fight, sir?
I think I agree with you. This very well could have just been the main event. Like, I don't know why it wasn't even to be honest with you, because it lived up to everything that it needed to be. I mean, it wasn't the numbers would have let you think Kopylov's going to come in here and head kick Chris Curtis and that's it. But Chris Curtis, man, for somebody who doesn't throw kicks, who doesn't initiate wrestling, who can only sometimes stop a takedown, it seems. I mean, he does a damn good job of boxing people's heads off. He does roll with punches. He doesn't wear damage. Like Kopylov was battered after the second round, in my opinion. It was just a cut, but he was bleeding, kept wiping it. But Chris Curtis is just a very, I want to say durable in the situation, even knowing the end of it. And I will bring that up in a second. I think also I initially had the thought that the ring was very slippery in this occasion. After a rewatch with my father, he would like me to note that it was the leg kicks that made Chris Curtis slip around so much. That's what he believes. I'm going to go with his word. And and towards the end, you had some BS stoppage where Mark Smith had to become Superman because there was a building falling on Chris Curtis apparently. Like I genuinely don't see how that or finish like got stopped. Mark Smith actually is ridiculous, and Chris Curtis should have took his L better. I will agree that's not something a Cincinnati player would do, like myself. Take my L, move on. But rightfully so. I mean, it was some BS, some BS.
All right.
So
Well, I'm going to end up playing a little bit of devil's advocate on that one in a second here, but let me break some of these things down just to go through it point by point. So, this, I would say, is probably your first fight of the year contender for 2025. Of course, we are very, 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 very early into the year, but it's certainly on the list because this was a great fight. Really, really crisp and accurate striking on both sides. That was the big note. I mean, we were watching this thing in real time saying, man, these guys are both landing so nicely. I think that Kopylov mixed up the attacks very nicely. Beautiful combos on Kopylov's side. Really, really good work there. Curtis, of course, very, very strong. So it was kind of like volume versus power at certain times. And because of that, like the fight had a very like natural progression to it. Round one, Kopylov with the volume. Curtis came out with urgency in round two. Round three looked like it was going for Kopylov pretty much. So it might have ended the same way regardless of the stoppage. But then, of course, the finish happened the way that the finish happened. So I guess we'll talk about that for a second as well. The one note that I have here to play devil's advocate for Mark Smith would be that the amount of time on the clock should not affect the referee's decision making. Doesn't
no.
matter if there's 1 second or 49 seconds, or 4 minutes, 59, whatever. You know what I mean? It's no matter where it is in the round, or without any credence paid to what time is on the clock, that should not play into their decision. However, Curtis was not in any imminent danger. Kopylov had already walked off. I understand the call only in the sense that Curtis did look like he would have been unable to continue had there been any strikes coming back. but there were no strikes coming back.
Yeah.
So because of that, I gotta agree with the naysayers a little bit on this one. I don't agree with the call. Either way, I think it was going for Kopylov based on all of the stuff that I just laid out here. I mean, he had just dropped him anyway, on top of a lot of effective striking that was leading up to that. I mean, it's just an unfortunate way for that fight to end because of how good a fight it was otherwise.
I think the final note that I'll make about Mark Smith is that, and then I will give Kopylov praise. I'm not trying to have the Curtis agenda. I really do. I see it. He obviously was gonna win Kopylov. This is the best version of Kopylov that we've probably seen. At least we know
Absolutely.
that he has wrestling in his backpack now. Like he can initiate it when he needs towards the end of the round, secure it, whatever. But in the Mark Smith's case, if it was Herb Dean, we probably would have got that go on. What do you want? Like, giving him the look, waving him on, like you walked away, like that's not a finish. You didn't go finish the fight, kind of look. But like, I do agree, the time definitely should not matter. Mark Smith should not have his eyes on the clock. He should be watching the fighters. But the way that it was, like by the time he huddled in there and is like cupping dude bro's head, it's like Chris Curtis is on one knee, like looking you in the face, like are questioning if you stopped it. And then to furthermore, he's erratic and moving around and like running around the cage after the fact. I don't know if Mark Smith believes that that was a bad call. I would love to actually hear his word on it. Some other referees do go to social media and defend their calls, but in my opinion, I Herb Dean would have just looked at it, and because Kopylov's walking away, like Chris Curtis is not unconscious, lifeless. Like he's literally on his hands and knees. It was weird.
Yeah, yeah, there was definitely weirdness surrounding it. You touched a little bit upon Curtis's reaction after the fact, which Chris Curtis is definitely a guy that has a little bit of that in him, that kind of sore loser aspect to an extent, I would say, kind of comes through. And he's a bit of a talker to begin with, so he's got a bit of a personality. Sometimes it goes one way, sometimes it goes the other way. Definitely did not handle the call very gracefully, I would say. I did think that Kopylov was a bit of a gangster for his post-fight interview, saying, "Hey, I didn't want to finish him. I didn't want to hurt him anymore." I was like, bro, I mean, come on, man. All right, we didn't need to like. I mean, you could have been a little bit more understanding of the weirdness of the situation. I would say would have been appropriate there, but it is what it is. He did win the fight like that. I also did want to touch on this point by Checkmate. Shout out to Checkmate Entertainment, by the way, where he said that Smith's mess up there was not calling the fouls. Watching it back, I mean, granted that there were a couple of fouls on Kopylov's side, but I don't think that Smith handled that poorly. Honestly, the fouls were not so dramatic that that I think that there would have been a warranted point deduction at any point there. I do remember hearing on commentary them saying that Eric Nixick, of course, the coach of Chris Curtis, was talking about being upset with the lack of calls when it came to the fouls. I didn't see any of that really being something that would have played in. It really was just the stoppage being a little bit weird, a little bit unnecessary based on the circumstances. And I do agree with Chase on this here too, saying that if it was a different referee like a Herb Dean, then it probably would have just been like a stand over to the side kind of thing. What's going to happen. And if Kopylov had like, if it had been that situation, it would have been a perfectly fine way to end it, especially with a second left. But again, even if you take that out of the equation, Kopylov's on the other side of the cage. It's his decision to engage or not to engage. Curtis, if he was as with it as he was claiming after the fact, he would have either defended himself intelligently or not, but he definitely did not look as out of it to warrant a single second stoppage. I mean, I think that that's the consensus there.
I think your note about the illegal strikes, to go back to Checkmate, I agree. I don't believe there was anything different to be done. What could have been done different, and this would have been definitely Chris Curtis trying to cry about something, in my opinion, if this were to happen, is because the strike that happened low was like a straight punch. At least from Curtis's view, he just got a straight right to the dick, right? But, if he would have complained about it, like, he just punched me in the dick. Like, how are you not gonna, like, it's not like a knee up close or like that's like a straight, but it was a parried punch. Like, Chris blocked the
Yeah,
punch
he
in
blocked
the
it down into his dick.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think again, the no call or not even a situation about it, like I think perfectly fine to continue on. Like Chris Curtis, he deals with a lot of shit. Got poked, the Vaseline, can I use your shirt? Like he's dramatic, that's just what it is. I don't
For sure. No, I agree. I mean that I think that it aside from the call, which again, we talk about these things after the fact, and now we're able to talk about them at length for 10, 20, 30 minutes, whatever at a pop. We can talk about it till the end of time. In the moment, it's a hard call to make. You always want to give the leeway to the referees as much as possible because of how tough of a job that it is. It was one of those split second judgment calls that was made. Whether you think it was the right one or not, it's just an unfortunate way for such a good fight to have concluded, I think, because had it not concluded that way, all we would be talking about is, damn, that was a really, really great fight.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying at the beginning. I think the officiating kind of took the steam out of this card because like, oh, we just watched it. The question would be like, oh my gosh, like it's going to decision to like, is it gonna like if Mark Smith would have like did the whole because he stepped in, he did like the whole fake out wave and then like checkmate said, then he did the whole cupping of the head. He was being so dramatic. Oh my goodness, was he being dramatic? But yeah, that would have been a great way to end this fight. And then there's another fight that potentially could have had a better ending just because of the way the officiating went. But this was definitely an all-out banger. Kopylov is the real deal. That one fluke against Fluffy, it don't matter. Fluffy, not Fluffy. Yeah, it was Fluffy.
Yeah.
Fuck him. We're on to other shit.
Well, and also, I mean, look where Fluffy's at now. I mean, like
Yeah,
he's on his way to bigger and better himself. So I think that that's a good loss. That loss ages well, and Kopylov continues on in his own right. So yeah, I
yeah.
think that this is really, really nice win for him. And yeah, shout out to Chris Curtis. All bullshit aside, I mean, even though he is a little bit of a baby, he certainly held his own in that fight. Being what seemed to be the slower guy, like he made the adjustments
Shorter
nicely.
too. Remember
Shorter
that.
guy too is absolutely the size difference was very apparent. He made the adjustments nicely. That's what I was saying about him coming out with more urgency in the second round. He knew he was down that first round. It was pretty apparent at that point, and he was with it up until he wasn't. I mean, up until the point where whether or not he was out is a little bit debatable. But I mean, he was really trying throughout the entire thing. It was a really good fight. Unfortunate way for it to end and for all of it to go down, but a great fight overall.
I think you made a great point about him being able to adjust. And I think I go back to my original point is it's very impressive for somebody who very rarely throws kicks. Like he's literally just a straight up boxer. So for him to adapt and switch the game plan and then starting to get the upper hand with just the hands is pretty impressive for Curtis, especially coming up at the age. He made a post after the fight saying he's probably going down to 170. Yeah, 170. So whatever's next for him, I don't know, but he's getting older. It's not going to be the best for him. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's just going to be what it's going to be. We'll see if he has more success there. But he has been around for a while. I also forgot that Curtis was a PFL alum.
Yeah.
He had cut his teeth over there in the PFL, so he's been doing his thing for a while.
Yeah, I do like Chris Curtis, man. I mean, I think he got robbed against Brendan Allen, and I think this is another fluky little finish in his little run. But at the end of the day, people like me, we will remember the truth. Brendan Allen is nobody to us.
All right, I like how that came around to a little diss into Brendan Allen there to close it out. So we'll leave it at that for that fight. But a great fight is the way that I would leave it.
100%.
Moving on to, we just had one potential fight of the year contender, early entry into the database on that one. I would say that this would be one of your potential knockout of the year contenders early on in the year. You have Cesar Almeida versus Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Man, Al Hassan really kind of let me down. I didn't realize just how farther into his career he is. I guess the age is something that I wasn't factoring in as strongly as I should have been. And also, I think I was a little bit underestimating of Cesar Almeida because, man, he fucking flatlined this dude.
Yeah, I will say that the build up for Abdul every time he fights is they're always talking about how he's got like a KO, like he gets a lot of KOs, and like when I look at his record, because I brought that up in the Discord, and they're like, "Have you seen this dude's record? Like, do you know who you're talking about?" I'm like, I think I listened to the things correctly. Like, it should be him. And I look at this dude's record, and holy shit, he's got just a bunch of bullshit, like sub to Joe Pfeiffer, draw, no contest or whatever you want to say, to Cody Brundage, and then this. I was skeptical. After hearing it, I let the Discord sway me. And at the beginning of the round, I will tell you, I was nervous. I was like, holy shit, I was right. Oh my goodness, this dude's he can throw bombs. Like, oh my goodness. And so he's rocking Cesar Almeida, drops him on his back. Surprised we didn't get no early stoppage, to be honest, because it was a pretty clean. He was laying on his back. So anyway, the fact that Cesar Almeida was able to get up was very impressive. I don't know if we see this move sometimes when people are down and they try to sneak out the back door and they put their head behind the other person's knee. I think that's very smart by Cesar, especially in a compromised position. He can't hit you on the top of your head if you're ducked behind his knee. He doesn't have much options. Then he was able to get back to his feet. Then we got a huge flurry in the pocket, and I was worried even more because Cesar, he didn't look like he was taking the shots well, but then he bounced off the cage with this rocket of a left hand. Holy shit. When I showed my dad, man, he went crazy. This was a good one. Cesar Almeida is that dude.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you pretty much said it all. I mean, Hassan was throwing nicely before the knockout shots. I mean, he dropped Almeida and stunned him right before the KO. That's what we were talking about in the watch long. Was like, God damn. I mean, how Almeida had the wherewithal to not only keep himself in the fight at period, point blank period, but then to figure out the accuracy of the shot. I mean, it did look like it was kind of an effortless one. So I mean, maybe there's a little bit of a compromised chin over all these fights that Al Hassan has had. Perhaps. I mean, I got to believe that maybe it's just the power that Almeida has, but whatever the reason was, Almeida, aside from mixing it up nicely beforehand, which is definitely to his credit, because I don't think I gave him enough credit for that. He's nice with picking shots in a nice combination of areas. He's not just headhunting the entire time, which is really nice to see. And then when he found that one shot, though, boy, man, it was lights out. This was a really, really hard one.
I will bring this up because this is the last clean finish, on the feet that we have for the night. I guess the gloves really are back. I guess we are back because this is the first card of the year. There was some talks, there was some muck in the air about whether the old gloves and the new gloves actually had a difference on the finishing that we were having. And I came into this card expecting hella decisions. I thought, no way, I'm looking at list of bums, quote unquote. Sorry. But I was very impressed to see that the gloves are back.
I am still a glove skeptic over here. I'm refusing to believe that old versus new gloves has anything to do with any of this stuff. I think that it was just circumstances per fight, because we had knockouts with the new gloves. It's not like it was no knockouts at
Killers,
all.
though. You had to be a killer. You had to be Zachary Reese, basically.
I mean, all right. Well, perhaps. I mean, I guess maybe I'd have to go back and actually look at the data to see what the numbers say or whatever. But I'm still doubtful that really played too much into it. But what I will say to that point, though, is that if the old gloves are preferable to the fighters, then fine. I mean, that's really what it comes down to me. I mean, I don't care what kind of gloves that they're wearing specifically. If they're, people were saying that the way that it made their hands feel was worse with the new gloves. It was too restrictive. It was cutting off blood flow to certain people, yada, yada, whatever the case is. If you're more comfortable, if you have one less thing to think about in order to get yourself to the point of being able to knock someone out, then that in and of itself sells the gloves.
I think Cesar Almeida is another good example. And I will go with this glove, agenda real quick. Because if you go back one other fight, Ihor Potieria made it all the way to the decision with Cesar Almeida. And up until just a couple weeks ago, Sean Woodson was pillow hands. And that's just where I'll leave it. But great performance by Cesar Almeida. This one, again, like I just said, we had been questioning if he can finish for a second. He got one when he came in here, and it was elbows to David Budka, like it was stupid. And then now this is like, now we know he can do it. And I think it's very impressive because Bisping, I think, was talking about it at the beginning of the fight, how Cesar Almeida fights is so, it's meticulous. Like it's not, he's zoned to anything that he does has a purpose. Like he's not just throwing flurries out there, not just moving the hands, where he's locked in. And when it's time to strike, it looks like he's able to go ahead and go for the kill. So I'm really happy for this performance.
Certainly made a believer out of me. I was skeptical of him last week. I remember saying vividly that, I didn't see anything that was overly impressive, but now I have. So, Cesar Almeida, remember the name.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, moving on to your co-main event of the evening. I thought that was a reaction to the co-main event. I was
It
like,
was.
"Hey,
It
oh,
was.
oh, it was okay." Well, I mean, look, this is Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Carlston Harris. This fight would have been fine in the middle of the card. It was a good fight. It was not. I think a lot of people are dogging this fight unnecessarily. Should it have been a co-main event when you had Kopylov versus Curtis earlier in the evening? Probably not. But it wasn't as bad as Chase's reaction would lead one to believe. But go ahead, Chase.
It wasn't as bad as, it could have been. I'm definitely skeptical on the Ponzinibbio co-main event shit that's going on. And now it seems like we'll probably get more of it. Maybe even a main event headline at the Apex, But this fight stoppage, oh my fucking God. Not only was it bad, and I want to say that, like, even me who wanted this fight to go to decision, I can take an L and understand that, like, Ponzinibbio, he dropped Carlston Harris on his back, and like the fight should have been done there. If you were going to stop the fight, it should have been at that first initial shit that happened. And I think they wanted to give him that finish back that they fucked up. I don't know, because the flurry that actually ended the fight right before the ref steps in, he's almost hit with a punch by Carlston Harris. It is actually ridiculous that the fight got stopped the way it did. Ponzinibbio probably would have finished it, uh, maybe, maybe. But this is also one where I want to say the ring was very slippery and Ponzinibbio was sliding all over the place and he couldn't, get. I I don't know. This fight frustrated me, ruined the rest of the night basically. Like I didn't even care about the main event because of what I just witnessed, like 2 times in this card.
Yeah, so the stoppage in this one was a little bit questionable indeed. After rewatching it, I don't think that we reacted too much to it early, like when we were doing the watch along. But rewatching it, yeah, I definitely see the discrepancy there. So I mean, I think that this was kind of a clunky bar fighty kind of fight to begin with. There were 3 knockdowns for Harris, of Santiago Ponzinibbio before Harris ultimately got TKO'd himself. Now, as Chase was saying, I mean, it was a stoppage on the feet. I know that some people are a little bit skeptical as to whether or not that should even be a thing. But I do think in this case, it really was apparent because if upon rewatching it, Harris really was like, I mean, he was immediately protesting in the sense that, like, I mean, he was still seemingly with it. Now, you could say that it was one of those ones where the referee is stepping in to keep the fighter from being too tough for his own good. I
His
can
face
see
was battered, I'll tell you that. He
he
did not look great, but that should
absolutely
not play a part. The doctor has to do that.
right. Well, and there are it's MMA, man. I mean, these guys are going to fight until they cannot fight any longer. That's just the nature of the game. So sometimes you do have to be the voice of reason to these guys saying, hey, the fight is over. This is it. This is how it's got to be. So I can see that part of it, but I do think that it probably could have gone on for a little bit longer. Now, would the conclusion have been the same? Very likely, I would think so, just because of where it had progressed to. But you need to see that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Like Kerry Hadley might have made the right call had an extra flurry been coming. Like if he would have dropped him in the next two shots, like okay, but we didn't get to see that part. Like that, you got to let us get to the part where we know the fight is over. We as the fans, like, and I know, officiating versus the fan viewpoint. It's like, and we obviously have two different POVs, it's like we generally know when the fight should be stopped, when when the fight is over, when one fighter has won, kind of deal. And sometimes they just they show how casual they are. I don't know. That's just how it is.
For sure, for sure. The other note that I had really from this, aside from all of the stuff with the stoppage, is that I really do like that overhand angle shot that Harris throws. It's a really funky punch. Like the angle that he throws it from is very like unorthodox, but it works when it works, and it worked here. Like I think that at least one of those knockdowns, if not two, came from that shot that he throws. It's like I think that we were comparing it to fly fishing.
Mhm.
It's like that
Yeah,
that
exactly.
cast shot like that. Um, and yeah, it's a cool shot. I mean, like Harris, he's not a bad fighter. I mean, he's a skilled dude, good, powerful striking on both sides. Ponzinibbio just able to weather the storm, and that's something that he has done in the past. They were talking about that on commentary, that this is not unusual for Ponzinibbio to take
To
some.
get his ass whooped. Sorry.
Yeah, right. I mean, to take some adversity and then come back from it. I mean, but I mean, look, whatever works for you, I suppose. It's not necessarily the prettiest in the world, but if he gets the win, he gets the win. Stoppage aside, I thought it was a decent performance for him. Probably doesn't need to be co-main event.
I think I disagree. This
Okay.
performance by Santiago Ponzinibbio, if it wasn't finished by the ref, like like you said, it was just a clunky bar fight. Like these dudes, in my opinion, Carlson Harris was doing some pretty good work. Santiago Ponzinibbio, he did not look like somebody who's gonna get on the mic and talking about having a run at the belt like that.
Oh,
Brother,
that should never happen.
well, that's what I'm saying, that's what he did, and, I'm looking at this, and it's like, I see nothing more than Chris Weidman, basically. This is bad, so, I don't know, man.
All right. I mean, fair enough. I definitely don't think that there's any champ potential in Ponzinibbio personally, but I'm just not as down on this fight as perhaps Chase is. So
I think, again, the ending ruined it, like, I was invested, like, because again, I was waiting for it to go to decision. I wanted Charleston Harris to pull through. I've decided I'm not a fan of too much violence. Like, I don't want it to be stopped, I don't want him to be knocked out unconscious. But Charleston Harris, I wanted you to make it to the bell, man. And the fact that the ref didn't even give us that opportunity, he just ripped me from the outcome of the fight, I feel like. Like, he gave me the outcome. I didn't get to see what happened, kind of deal.
all right, fair enough. So, I mean, I guess that one's that one then, and we'll see what happens for both those guys going forward. I would think it should be more of the same, and like I said, I think my big takeaway is just lower down on the pecking order, lower down on the fight order. Don't need to
Yeah.
be co-main or main event for
Yeah,
either of those guys.
it's like who like I don't know. Maybe I'm too new, but it's like who is asking for Ponzinibbio to be in the co-main event? And I'm not trying to rag on him. I did want to say Ponzinibbio, great win. I'm not trying to be that guy, but like who's asking for this? At some point, he's got to be wondering too. Like, damn, I'm ahead of some pretty good people.
I
But
think he's still just riding the reputation from pre hiatus. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
so I mean that's crazy. So whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the main event and close this thing out. Mackenzie Dern versus Amanda Ribas. This is their second fight, of course. They fought once before, and Amanda Ribas won that one. I thought this was a pretty competitive fight up until the finish. A little decent striking, grappling on both sides. I think it was 1-1 going into that third round, and decent two-way action. I think it was also pretty down the line what I expected from both women at this point. Like I think this was a very even matchup, so decent matchmaking in that regard. And the way that it finished was not super surprising either. So Mackenzie Dern had I think 3 armbar finishes prior to that, or 2, and that was the third. Either way, Mackenzie Dern, a very accomplished Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner. So nothing too unexpected from this main event, in my opinion.
Yeah, to answer Toby's question, yes, she was hot. Mackenzie Dern did look good. And that is what is a leading contributor of why she's also in the pound for pound list, coming in at number 2. She did get a finish. That is big when you are a woman. Amanda Ribas on the opposite side. You are pretty low because, in my opinion, I was stale face for this. Still wondering what I had witnessed in this main card. So I wasn't very engaged, but by the end of it, Mackenzie Dern did her thing, and I can't argue too much of a performance when you get a finish. I mean, listen. Some I have actually. I can think probably back to some, but this one, good job, Mackenzie. Amanda Ribas. Yeah, I guess you're just mid, and I really thought you got it, girl.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the unfortunate aspect of Amanda Hebos is that she's one of those kind of middlers when it comes to the women, and I hate to say that because everybody talks up Mackenzie Dern, and of course she is my favorite lady as well. But Amanda Hebos is also quite beautiful, and she's got the greatest personality on planet Earth. If you've ever heard an interview with Amanda Hebos, she is the sweetest, most like I call her the manic pixie dream girl of MMA. I mean, she's just like bubbly and happy and very positive personality, like complete opposite of the killer that she, the locked in version of her when she's in the cage. But it's just she's one of those fighters that back and forth kind of deal. She gets a win, she takes a loss, she gets a win, takes a loss. A little bit of a red light, green light situation there, and it's unfortunate in that aspect because I would like better for her, but Mackenzie Dern also is that way too a little bit. Tom Cruise was talking about how, oh, this is probably going to set up the trilogy between the two of them, and I was like, do we need? Do we need? I don't know. I mean, I think that both of them just sort of are in that middling position here. If they want to do that, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world. But again, I don't think it's something that anybody's clamoring for.
Yeah, but what you're missing out is they just gave the UFC a headline for 2026. So that's good. Rebus and Dern 3.
Yeah, really. That the much anticipated trilogy, I suppose.
Yep.
And I mean, yeah, Checkmate's bringing up some good points. Is that the coaching is certainly helping when it comes to the striking and mixing up mixing it in with the chain wrestling and all of that. I mean, it was definitely on display there, but I'm not seeing like any kind of like grand ascension for Mackenzie Dern to the point of thinking that that it's going to be like a new evolved form. Again, I already have gone through this with Mackenzie Dern. So when after the Angela Hill fight, I was saying, man, this is Dern 2.0. This is the killer version that we've been waiting for. This is post divorce Mackenzie Dern coming into her own. This is going to be the time for her to shine and really become the boogie woman that people were kind of hoping that she would be, because everybody is obviously big fans of hers for various reasons. I just haven't seen it, and I don't think that this performance necessarily showed that there is any kind of grand differentiation there that is going to put her into a different category. I guess she's doing it against Amanda Hebos is like, if she can do that against a top 5 opponent, then maybe I'll change my tune there. But she's been in those positions to have those kinds of matchups, and she has come up short. So
Yeah, it'll have to be, tailor made kind of deal for like a striking matchup. Like I think her last not she got a knockout against Luana Pinheiro, I think that's who it was. Oh dang, that was actually a while ago now. Yeah, she lost to Rose after that. Jeez. I mean, I at that point when I saw the Rose loss, I basically chalked it up to, okay, Rose is technically like a great in the women's MMA sphere. So like that's not a terrible loss. But Mackenzie Dern, now you're slipping down. Macy Barber, I mean, you got knocked out by Macy Barber. Holy shit, Amanda, come on. Like, I don't know. It's
So,
tough.
yeah, I mean, that's just kind of where it is. It's like, they're both just sort of in that position, and there's nothing to say that either one of them couldn't uh, break out and have the performances, get on a streak and change the conversation. But based on this fight and the fights that we've had previous, it's just it is what it is. It's like you can't really assign too much greatness to on either side here, and that's why if they're talking about having a trilogy between the two of them, then it's kind of fine because they're both going to probably be in relatively same positions in the rankings going forward anyway. So yeah, throw them in for a third and have it as a co-main on something. It's
Oh no,
whatever.
it'll be the headline, brother. Just wait.
Well, I mean, yeah, it'll probably be a headline for other reasons, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So all in all, I didn't really take away too much talking about needle movers. Like I said, I mean, you beat somebody who's not really light years ahead of you. You lose to somebody who's not really that much better than you, but you still lost. I mean, who really cares, honestly? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, going forward, it's like who's sitting here like, who's on Mackenzie Dern's hit list next? It's like, oh my goodness, I don't know.
Yeah, perhaps. So, anyway, I mean, that's about it. Nice armbar finish for Mackenzie Dern, closes it out, and that is your first event of the year. So, going through it, having done that just now, Chase, overall perception of UFC Vegas 101.
I think it was pretty good. I'm very happy that 2025 started out with something that we can at least talk about. And there's a lot of things that went on. A lot of people. We had a lot of contender series guys. In the prelims, they showed out. They did their thing, and I'm really happy with the roster moving forward. It's going to be fun this year.
Absolutely. I think that this was a really fun one to start it off. Of course, everybody was just happy to have fights on again at all. So we got that, we're getting back into the swing of things. I think that this was a nice primer to get us ready and going for 311, which we have coming up this weekend. But before we get into the preview of 311, I want to switch gears a little bit here because this is news that has just came out. This is actually breaking news, just came out today. And if you have been listening to this show for any length of time, you know that we have covered this subject pretty in depth around here. Just other organizations, we're always keeping an eye on what's going on outside of the UFC. So today it was announced that the Bellator brand is no more. Bellator is dead, is the word on the street. Ariel Helwani did some reporting. He had a clip that has been going around that is rather long, so we're not going to play the clip, but I have broken down the key points of the clip from Helwani's reporting, and I'm going to read off my notes. Chase, you jump in whenever you feel appropriate, and we can discuss some of these points.
Okay.
All right, so the key takeaway, of course, as I said, is that Bellator is no more. There will be no more Bellator events. The Bellator name is being discontinued. The PFL will now have champion series events that will be headlined by title fights. PFL will have its own champions independent of the tournament system. So what that means is you will still have PFL tournaments, but you will also have events that are more standard events that have undercards and title fights attached to them.
Okay. Okay.
Is that making sense?
Yeah.
All right. So it's basically like taking the Bellator model and folding it into the PFL is what I'm looking at that part as. It's currently unclear how these champions will be decided going into this new structure. However, so there's he was saying like if these tournament winners are they going to go up against the Bellator people or like how is it going to work as to how their champion series champions are going to be named as such. Ariel thinks that the current Bellator champions will become the PFL champions in that structure, and I think that that makes sense because why would you strip the champions for no reason? You know what I mean?
I think the main takeaway that I had is what the first part you said is how they're gonna, fold. They're getting rid of Bellator, folding in this new structure. It's like my first thought was that the $1 million tournaments started eating away really quick, didn't they? Because this did not last.
Well, we'll touch on that in a minute here, so I'll keep
Okay,
going.
sorry.
No. But it's a good point. That does get brought up a little bit later on here. Let me keep going on with the notes. Okay, so PFL Champion Series events will pretty much be standard events held throughout the year, headlined by title fights, as I said. The PFL season format is over. This, I think, is a very important new change and is really a good one. So the new format is going to be 6 to 8 weight classes represented, single elimination tournaments running concurrently. So tournaments of 8 fighters with 2 alternatives per tournament. They're not going to have the standings. They're not going to have the point system anymore. It's going to be a Grand Prix style tournament for the weight classes, 8 fighters, 2 alternates, and that's going to crown your winner of the tournament. The tournament winners are going to get $500,000. The winners will get probably some kind of belt, quote unquote, but they're not going to be considered champions of their divisions. The champions of their divisions are going to be named and crowned based on the Champion Series events. So tournament is separate.
So you could be the champ and lose in the tournament and continue to have the belt after. Okay.
Well, I mean, you would have to
I know
win
it's
it.
a right. So if you go into the season or whatever they have set up, and it's like, okay, you're the champ at the end of it, and it's like, okay, tournament time's coming up, and then you lose in the first round. It's like, well, you're not much of the champ of that division now, are you?
Right, but I think that the idea is that the guys who are champions outside of the tournament probably are not going to be fighting inside of the tournament.
Okay.
Because I mean, that's the whole
Or they're
thing
going to
is
be the final of the like
right.
something.
And that was what I was kind of touching on earlier is that it's probably going to be that the tournament winners are going to fight the champions that are currently in place.
And then what? Well, okay. And then
And
they
then they
and then if they win, they just can't compete in the next tournament.
theoretically, that part is
Yeah.
still a little up in the air.
Okay.
So the $500,000 number is in addition to the fighter's standard purse. In the past, the PFL tournament winners won $1 million, like you mentioned, but that was minus their standard purses throughout the tournament. So every time that they fought in the tournament, if they had whatever it was, Ariel threw out 150 and 150. I thought that that was way, way high for a PFL fighter. But let's say that they were doing 50 and 50, 50 to show, 50 to win. That was being deducted from the $1 million. Now the $500,000 is a cherry on top plus your standard purse throughout the course of the tournament.
So they're basically ripping of another $500,000 because these dudes are going to get paid like what, 15,000, 20,000, like you said, at max, maybe 50,000. It's like 50-50. It's like, well, you're cutting them now 400,000 out just because you're changing shit.
Well, I mean, but who knows if that 150,000 number was accurate, which I said, I thought that sounded way crazy, but perhaps if PFL is just really paying these guys, who knows? I mean, maybe there are some of them who have negotiated pretty high, but in the tournament system, probably not. I would say that you're probably right. There is still going to be a little bit less money in the overall, but you know, if it's still let's say total 600K, you know what I mean? Based on what, because it's what it would be like 3 fights to win it. I mean, still decent money, I guess. Definitely a change one way or another.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I think I agree with Toby. I mean, well, Checkmate actually just dropped some good numbers. I don't know if you saw those. 8-8 for the first round. I mean, so they,
it
yeah,
could be, yeah,
they're
very
cutting
well
them a
could
lot
be.
of money. But so back to Toby, on the real, Bellator's been dead. It's only just now official. It's like when I have never in my life of watching MMA in the past year, I haven't seen not one Bellator promotion, like seen a tweet, came across the Bellator thing, a time, a day. Like, when was the last one? Did they just like go like 2 weeks ago and then they're like, oh shit, we're just like not Bellator anymore? Like, I don't know.
It's a good point. I mean, it's especially now. I mean, there have been times like Bellator has always been, I think, for a lot of people, like appointment viewing, like where it's like, if there is a specific fighter or a specific fight that you really want to see, like the one that I can recall off the top of my head very vividly is that like the Fedor's retirement fight with Ryan Bader was one that drew a good amount of numbers. I think that me and Vitz King ended up watching that before watching like bare knuckle or something like that. You know what I mean? Like we doubled it up because it was on the same night. But like we went out of our way to make sure that we had gotten to that point. Like, that it wasn't like we're just happy, like we're following all the time and then this is just the next one coming up. So yeah, no, to your point, I mean, it always has been second fiddle. It has been a much further down the line second fiddle, I would say, based on it being bought over by PFL and the way that they had been managing it. But if this was always the end goal for the PFL to roll it into this new version of what they've got going on, then I think a lull does make sense. And now hopefully all of those problems that we've been hearing about from fighters not being able to get booked, maybe this is going to be able to take care of that. That's at least what I'm hoping happens, so that all these guys are not completely disgruntled as they have been. We've been reporting on that a whole bunch.
Yeah, and it is going to be interesting. Like, Ali asked in the Discord, like, what does this mean for the fighters moving forward? Are they just going to become PFL fighters? And so, in my opinion, my first thought was like, well, they might, offer them the option to void the contract and then go seek other, promotions or whatever, or they just renegotiate and they're going to offer them less because they clearly are working stuff around where they're using less, getting the fighters at least 500,000 less. Like, I mean, at minimum or whatever you want to say. So that's, I don't know. It's just interesting to think about what's actually going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to that end, I guess to an extent, Ariel claims that the PFL finances are in a good place currently. Says that they have a good investor pool, that they've got decent sponsorship stuff going
Well, you
on.
wouldn't come out and say, "Oh yeah, our finances are fucked." Like we're
I mean, he's claiming that he's talking to inside guys that would be giving him the straight dope. I don't know if you got to take all of it with a grain of salt, I suppose. But at least based per Ariel Helwani's sources, I should say, he says that the prize reduction isn't a sign of their collapse. I guess is what he was trying to get at with that. Because a lot of people, when that news came out about them taking the $1 million down to 500,000, everybody was saying, "Oh, this is a really a bad sign." He's saying that no, that's not actually the case. It's just part of this restructuring. And
because it's gonna be a bad sign if we don't restructure.
well, I mean, but no, see, no, I don't. I would push back on that because what I'm saying is that they were already planning on folding Bellator in at some point. That was already established that Bellator was going to get brought into the fold. The reason that they were operating it independently after the purchase is still a little unclear to me. Maybe they were still trying to figure out exactly what they were going to do, like how they wanted to structure everything. But like having them separated was a little bit strange. But like I think that the whole idea was always to do what they basically have done here, is to eliminate one of the two brands, and it was going to be Bellator. So, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's like foreboding just yet. Now, it certainly still could go that direction, but off rip, I wouldn't take it that way.
I think one last thing that I will note about the situation is way to even screw up losing the better promotion name. Like Bellator sounds 10 times better than the fucking PFL. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, and now you have the GFL too, so it's like PFL, GFL.
It's like, yeah, I already type in GFL and find like a foundation for plants. Like I can't even find that stuff. So same thing with PFL. I mean, like Bellator, it at least you can know what Bellator is. Like that's nothing else other than what we know it as, kind of deal. Like
right.
what out in the wild, what is a Bellator? Out in the
Yeah.
wild, whatever you want to say. But PFL, yeah, they could have had the better name.
Sure. So the last note that I do have about this, based on Ariel Helwani's reporting here, is that it is currently unclear where Bellator's January 25th event will air, because they do have an event that is now going to be their last event. It apparently is still going to be moving forward. And coincidentally, I had mentioned the Fedor retirement event coinciding with Bare Knuckle. This last Bellator event will be taking place on the same night as BKFC's Knucklemania 5. So whether or not people are going to actually tune in for the last Bellator event just to see the conclusion of that brand, I guess remains to be seen. There has been some rumors that it might be free on YouTube. If that's the case, then you might get a little bit of viewership out of that. If they do something like that, I would say it would be a good idea, because it might get more people to watch and then hopefully transition over to this new version of the PFL that they've just outlined here. That is still up in the air, but I would think that probably within the week we'll know where the final Bellator event is going to take place. But either way, that is the death knell for Bellator. The sad song of them going out is concluding here now. So take it for what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to say on it. I mean, I do have one last thing, but I mean, other than not saying much, it's like, what else can you say? It's like it's over, end of an era, ready for new things. The PFL might be something to tune into with new changes. Let's see what if they're ready to hit the ground rolling, maybe it's time to tune in and see what it's about. You know, um, it might be a better time than ever, just like with WWE and Netflix. It's like new era, the PFL and their new restructured system. Let's see what they got. I mean, you got to at least buy into the idea, and we'll see.
Yeah, that's pretty much my takeaway as well. Overall, I am sad about the Bellator brand going down because I always did root for the underdog on that one, even though they came up short rather regularly. Shout out to Kimbo Slice versus Dada 5000. I'm sure Vitz King knows what I'm talking about there. But I wanted Bellator to thrive more than it did, and so that part of it is sad. But I think that the positives of this is that they're basically taking away the unpopular elements of the PFL and rolling Bellator into the brand in a way that makes sense. It's like you still, because really, if you think about it, the way that they have it laid out, you sort of still have Bellator. If you think about it in the current terms, right? You have Bellator operating in the standard format that the UFC operates under with cards and their champions and events and that sort of stuff, and then you have PFL's tournament system. Now you still have that. This whole Champion Series stuff is going to just be regular events, and they're still going to have tournaments, except now the tournaments are not going to have the convoluted point system and the seasons and all that crap, which is the stuff that I think was bogging down the PFL brand. It was a little bit too confusing and no one cared to keep up with it. So overall, I think that this is a pretty positive change for the organization, and doesn't really change too much as far as structurally. Like Chase said, it could be a whole new era here. Let's hope that is the case.
Yeah, last thing, Bellator has better belts than PFL too. Like, I mean, how do you just like
Nice
why
looking belt.
didn't maybe it's harder to move more people over to the other side of the facility, but like just say we're Bellator now. Why'd you have to become PFL? Like, I know one company wants to be, but like it's 10 times better of a name and 10 times better of belts, and you have like there's history with the PFL. Like you can name Fedor, Dada 5000 and Kimbo Slice. Like, who in the hell is caring about who's in the PFL other than Decheva? Like, isn't that telling if that's the person carrying it right now, in my opinion? So,
Hey, I mean, Kayla was in there. Larissa Pacheco.
yeah, but Kayla didn't like. I know Decheva. I know I'm recent to the sport. I obviously miss Kayla
I was
Harris at
gonna
the
say you weren't paying
time.
attention back then.
So, but like, I don't know, man. Bellator, I think they could have had a chance if they would have went to Bellator. I think there's a better ceiling for them.
Well, I mean, look, I guess we're just gonna have to see what the new version of it looks like now, and uh, what uh, quality level we end up with. This is what they're doing, and these are the moves that the
Well,
people in power are trying to make.
quality of the fights is going to stay the same because it's just the same roster, and there's nothing going to change for the people in the room. Like, they're losing money at the end of the day. Now it's like, why they're going to have less incentive, in my opinion. It's like no $1 million. I mean, 500 grand is cool, but like $1 million, like I'll fight for $1 million, so
Well,
it's
that's
going to be
just a
interesting.
tournament, though. I mean, yeah, I guess that's part of it, maybe for the people who want to go enter the tournament system. But hopefully, now at least the fighters that were complaining about the
or
Bellator stuff are going to get their fights.
Or you're going to get people who normally are in that PFL tournament, and now that there's not $1 million on the contract, they're like, "Well, I can just go get 4 or 5 fights in the new system, like whatever." So I don't know. I'm not going to win the tournament anyways. Why would I compete in the tournament when I can just go compete in the other seasonal thing?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, look, it's a lot of speculation right now based on the news that just came out today. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I mean, I guess the takeaway as well is to keep an eye on it and see if it's a product that you end up liking, and see if there is any value there. I just did a whole long stream solo last week talking about Don Davis, who is the for all intents and purposes the Dana White of the PFL, and there's a lot to dig into in the way that he is going about conducting his business, and like because he's very much a businessman. He is not a fight person; he's a business person. So I gotta believe, again, just to play like a devil's advocate here, that like he's navigating from a money perspective, and if that's the case, then hopefully that will lead to a product that people want to consume, because that's the
Yeah.
whole name of the game. You are selling a product. If you don't have consumers, you don't get anything. So hopefully that ends up being what happens throughout all of this. We're just gonna have to wait and see. But that's the news on Bellator for right now.
Yeah, I get with it. That's cool.
All right. So To close out this stream, let's go over to UFC 311 coming up this weekend. You know the deal, everybody. Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan 2. Run down a couple of these fights just to give you a little bit of taste of what we will be watching and talking about next week on the show here. So, obviously, the title fight main event is Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan. What are you thinking here?
I'm thinking I'm thinking it's worrisome. Are we buying into that Islam is about to go down as one of the all-time greats? Maybe if not already is, whatever you want to say. Or are we going to buy into that just a couple fights ago he was fighting Bobby Green and were questionable. But I don't know, Armin, it's hard to say, man. This is a really interesting matchup. To be fair, never even watched the original. I know it went to decision or whatever, and it was close, but this should be very, very good.
Yeah, I think that this is probably one of, if not the best matchups that you're going to get in the current shakeup of this division. Islam obviously is Islam, top of the heap and showing no signs of slowing down. Armin has, I think, the best skill set to challenge him in a real way. So I think that this is going to be a very important fight to see who really is the king of the heap at this division. And I would really, I see no reason to doubt Islam. I mean, he's
Yeah.
been doing the damn thing so dominantly for so long that 26-1 screams authenticity to me based on what we've been seeing. He's the evolved version of Habib. We all talk about the comparisons there. He's got the striking that Habib did not.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm not really too sure. All I know is I'm following Father's plan, so Islam is definitely part of that, and we'll go down to the other ones here in a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. So, I mean, I know that there are some people that are riding with Armin on this one. I think that it is possible for sure. He did pretty goddamn good against Charlie Olives, but of course, Islam took care of Charlie Olives very easily himself. So, that's fight math. That's not necessarily what's going to happen, but I just. Until you give me a reason to think otherwise, I think that minus 400 is probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, I can dig that.
All right. Co-main, also title fight, Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Nurmagomedov. We talked a good amount of stuff about these guys on a previous episode, going over the shakeups of the divisions right now. I think that my assessment is pretty much similar to the main event on this one. What are you thinking?
Um, this one is also going to be interesting. It's going to be real grapple heavy, I assume. Following Father's plan, I will probably be going with Umar Nurmagomedov, but Marab is interesting. He does seem like he's taking a personal beef to this kind of matchup, and unfortunately, I have seen him get choked to the point of unconsciousness. He didn't lose the fight, I don't think, but he was damn near. He was definitely unconscious to one of these chokes I've seen. So if Umar gets him, I mean, that's some good strength that they got down there in Dagestan.
Yeah, no, I agree on that aspect of it. I'm gonna ride with Marab on this one, mostly because I think that this, like I was saying about the main event, I think that this is about as good as you're gonna get in this division as far as evenness of the matchup and like the real true test for the dominance in the division. And I just think that Marab is going to want it more, and I'm thinking that the experience is going to play a part. I think
Yeah,
that's going to be the deciding factor, really, because I think they are so evenly matched up in so many ways. We talked a little bit about it. I think I started to kind of come around a little bit to your side of the thinking when it came to Umar's striking. Going back and looking at some of the highlights there. Highlights, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it. Looking at some footage of him, I was kind of seeing what you were saying about staying on the outside, not really like going in driving, putting the pressure on, at least with the striking. And I think that Marab is probably going to be able to navigate that. I think you're going to get some crazy scrambles in this fight. Like I'm hyping this fight up in my mind a little bit because I think it's a little bit better than people are maybe giving it credit for in those regards. Like I think that there's a lot of it's going to be very competitive. What actually ends up happening when it comes to the striking, we're going to have to wait and see at that point. But as of right now, all things even, I'm going with experience. I'm going to go with Marab.
100%. I hear you.
All right, Yuri Prohashka versus Jamal Hill, the fight that everybody's been looking forward to, huh?
Yeah, the dudes who are arguing who got knocked out faster, you know? It is funny. I do wanna believe in Yuri because I buy into his character more. I think he's better for the promotion. I think him winning has more fans happier than if Jamal Hill wins or sad or upset at Jamal Hill, whatever, if he's a heel in the situation. Like, like Yuri, after we watched what Alex could do to him, it's like I feel like Yuri's just like he's our baby now. We got to protect him. And if Jamal Hill is the matchup, I think he's got a very good chance. I think Yuri's got this.
Yeah, for those exact reasons that you just laid out, that is why I'm going with Jamal Hill. Um,
Oh,
I look. My thing with Yuri is that I was in the exact same boat as you. I bought into the character of Yuri for quite some time, and I like Yuri as a guy. I think he takes the sport extremely seriously. I think that he takes his like the demeanor, the whole stoicism, the samurai aspect of it, all that stuff. He really believes himself when it comes to that, and I think that there's a great strength in that, and that I don't take away from him in the slightest. However, I think that the mask has started to slip when it comes to the effectiveness of how he operates in the cage. I think we've seen it a couple too many times at this point, to put the full backing in it, and also that, I mean, that's that side of the coin. On the other side of the coin is Jamal Hill. I think has so much to prove right now. I mean, like this man has been mentally broken by the loss to Alex to the point that he wants nothing more. I really do believe that he has that picture of Alex just taped to the mirror, and he wakes up to it every morning saying, this is the guy I've got to beat. So
see, and that's the difference is Jamal Hill is letting that loss determine everything about his future, while Yuri just hours ago said he believes he could beat Alex in the third fight. Just give it to him. There's differences. There's skill level in the mindset. Yuri, he's a conqueror. Any opponent, he's going to the top. It's not Jamal Hill who's looking just ahead at the car. Yuri's looking at the finish line, and I'm ready for it. I think Yuri's got it.
look, I'd be certainly happy if Yuri does take this fight. Like I'm a big fan, and I want to see him succeed. I think that Jamal is. I mean, I think that determination that he's set in his mind is, whatever I have to do to get back to Alex is what I'm going to do, and I think that that's just going to carry him through. So.
It would be an interesting storyline for him. It's like the rest of his career. He's like, I just want Alex. I don't care. And if he loses or wins, I think that'll be great for his career because it'll either get further away from him and his delusions will get even better, or he'll get closer. And then we're actually curious, like, do we really want to see him die again? But
Perhaps. I mean, if that's the case, but I mean, it's one of those situations where it's kind of ironic that Alex and Izzy had the saga that they had, and now Alex has become the Izzy to Jamal Hill. I would
yeah,
say, but so I'm thinking that that's going to carry him through. I could be 100% off base, and I would be happy if I am, but that's just my gut is going with Jamal Hill on this one. Even though
yeah,
the odds are fairly even on this one. It's pretty much a pick 'em. So,
I hear
uh,
you.
we'll see what ends up happening there. Hanato Moicano versus Beneil Dariush. I know you got something to say about this one.
Easy money. Easy money. It's not even close. Dariush is old. He's been inducted into like Hall of Fames for doing stuff. Like that's how long of a career he's had. I know it's not for the sport itself, it's other shit outlying it, but he's done. He's got gray hair in the picture, and that was 4 years ago. He's toast. He's done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would agree with that one. I think that Moicano is just on such a tear lately. You want to talk about fighters that have evolved into their final form. I think that Hanato Moicano has certainly done that. He's been proving himself time and time again. The ease at which he took out Benoit Saint Denis just cannot be overstated. I mean, doing that with a separated shoulder, no less. I mean, him coming into a fight full health, hopefully, I don't want to jinx it, of course, but in all things even, I think that this is just going to be a really, really big coming out party for him, even more so than what Benoit Saint Denis should have been. I think you made a good point when we were talking about this previously, saying that this is a little bit of a smack in the face to Renato Moicano, not really moving up in the rankings after that win, not getting a performance bonus because of it, and ending up fighting a guy who's only a rank above him, right?
Yeah.
Or one below, above,
Yeah,
below,
something
whatever.
like that. Yeah, well,
Too close.
and that's kind of skewed anyways because Moicano didn't get any ranks for beating BSD in his home territory as the underdog. So it's kind
Right.
of So maybe it's a little fair, maybe not, because Dariush shouldn't even be facing higher competition, whatever.
Yeah, but
Um,
either way, I mean, that's the whole deal. Is that I think that this needs to be a big stage showcase fight for Moicano. Another, I mean, the fact that this guy is on the microphone winning fans every time that he opens his mouth can't be understated either. I mean, like he's, he's just doing his thing every single time right now in a dominant fashion. Get this win, shoot up in the rankings. This division is one that's prime for some shaking up, as we talked about earlier, in previous streams. So.
in his last appearance on the mic, Moicano said he wants easy money, give him the easy fight. He can negotiate who he picks to fight. I don't know why people are actually giving Dariush a chance. Moicano believes this is easy, and I believe it.
Yeah, let him get this win. I think that's absolutely going to happen here, and for that money, for a minus 185, I would jump on that immediately if you can get him at that.
Yeah, yeah.
And to round out the main card, Kevin Holland versus Rainier de Ritter, the one championship former two-time champion. There, what
Yeah,
do you think?
I think the numbers are a little too close. Kevin Holland has a lot of losses. He's lost a lot of different ways. Rene de Ritter is one of these dudes that can awkwardly give a lot of different looks to you, and that's what's going to make it difficult, because like we've already seen Kevin Holland get frustrated by MVP, like the unorthodox. It's not, in MVP's case, it's not unorthodox, but it's something that you don't see very often, and Rene de Ritter is one of those fighters, and he is definitely going to give Kevin Holland something to be frustrated about, so it'll be
Yeah,
interesting.
I would agree. My gut is telling me Kevin Holland, but I'm not confident in that one. I think that Kevin Holland's going to be on like the underdog parlay. You know what I mean? I'll have him on a parlay, I'm kind of I'm in the same boat there as well. Like the line is very close on this one as well. I think all of what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And De Ritter did not inspire a ton of confidence in his fight with Gerald Meerschaert because it is Gerald Meerschaert. You know, you'd think that this champion level guy should be coming in, walking through a guy like Gerald Meerschaert, even though obviously Meerschaert is my dude, I think that he's awesome. So I'm happy that it went down the way that it did. Still got the win in that fight, but it did not scream like, oh, this is the next up kind of guy. I think that this is a good matchmaking here, honestly, for that reason. I mean, Kevin Holland is another kind of stepping stone guy. If you're about your shit, you should be able to beat Kevin Holland. So, Kevin Holland had the matchup with JDM, and that's the match that always gives me pause when it comes to Jack Della Maddalena's credentials. So I think that it's one of those ones that could kind of go either way, depending on what version of Kevin Holland shows up, because he's either hot or he's not, and sometimes he just doesn't take the fight seriously, which is just a weird, unfortunate thing. But if he shows up and wants to win, he can win potentially. I don't know if it's going to go that way. I'm tentatively going with Rainier de Ritter. I'll have Kevin Holland on a separate parlay.
Well, I mean, I think it's the same thing with Christian Rodriguez. It's like you got to put the carrot in front of him. You got to give him something that he wants, and I think this is a good matchup because Rene de Ritter. I mean, I think MVP is a good comparison too. It's like this is somebody from outside of promotion coming into the UFC. I got to prove that I'm the level that they can't get past. Kevin Holland did look like he took MVP serious. It was not possible for him to catch up, and he's a lot faster than I thought he was. Rene de Ritter just might be able to get off early and implement some awkwardness. I think that's really all it's going to come down to.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And Kevin Holland knows he's a kung fu black belt. He should know. He should know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and Rainier de Ritter, with the with like, I think that Gerald Meerschaert actually summed his style up very succinctly. I think that pre-fight, going into that fight, he had said that Rainier de Ritter has a very competitive BJJ style. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily like an MMA BJJ style. It's like it's more like tournament style. So I mean, like it's awkward, and like the rest of it is awkward. The things that he surrounds the BJJ with are the awkward elements of him. So it's like it does kind of create an interesting set of dynamics to have to deal with, and that could lead to a couple of openings that Holland's not prepared for.
Yeah, 100%.
So. All right, moving on to the prelims. Your featured prelim here is Peyton Talbot versus Hani Barcelos. I like this fight. Peyton
Um,
Talbot, this could be his big debut for a lot of people, I would say.
If you like it, I'll listen to you, but in my opinion, I saw the name and I said another can. But
Oh, Hani Barcelos is not a can, my man.
you know what? Before I go on a separate rant, because I think it is needed, I want you to go ahead and tell me why he's not a can.
I mean, he's a vet. I mean, like he's been
Okay.
around, he's been doing his thing. I mean, he has some good wins. I mean, he is a little bit older now, so I mean, like going back, checkerboard, obviously 3-2. So yeah, he's not or two
Mhm.
and three rather.
Yeah, I get you.
He's not he hasn't been like doing great now, but I mean, also 37 years old. I mean, he's a dude who he's one of those guys that like yeah he should like not win this fight, like this should be a big thing for Peyton Talbot, but I do think that it's going to be a lot more competitive than all of the dudes that Peyton Talbot has been running through.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm hoping it's definitely a better matchup than whatever the last French guy was because Peyton just, mopped him. And that was definitely a step down from the competition that he had before with Cameron Simon. At least, from the general viewpoint, Cameron Simon was supposed to be a very highly touted prospect, and he hadn't been seen since, I don't think.
Mhm.
Um, and only lost to Umar is pretty impressive. So I will say that. But I also wanted to mention, and I don't know if this has happened before. I don't think we've talked about it because I probably would have seen it and had this rant already. This is playing on Disney Plus. The prelims are gonna be on Disney Plus. It says right there.
Yeah, I guess that they're doing the full suite of Disney
Yeah.
streaming
Well,
services for
and
this
and
one.
so I wanted to go on a side note rant because,
Yeah.
like, why is Disney Plus accumulating all these rights to play stuff? Like, is Disney Plus not supposed to be the kids' channel? Why am I getting on Disney Plus and seeing FX shows like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia on there? Like, and now we're having UFC. Like, what has Disney Plus become? I'm just very confused. Anyway,
It's
like, it's
called Monopoly is what it's
like,
become.
wow, like, oh my lord of mercy. Anyway,
Yeah.
continue on.
Well, I mean, Disney owns ESPN, Disney owns Hulu, Disney owns FX, Fox, and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, Disney has a lot of properties under its belt. It is a little odd that they are specifically airing this card, but yeah, I mean, they've been glomming up things left and right. Actually, Disney also, I believe, just struck a deal with Fubo, and that impacts combat sports because now Bare Knuckle is going to be airing in some capacity on a Disney property with that
Nice,
partnership. So, yeah,
nice.
a little bit of a platform for them, but yeah, Disney just sucking up as much as they can get their hands on in the entertainment world,
True.
which is going to be interesting. That goes back to something I talked about on the week that you were not here when I was talking about like what's going to happen to the UFC's broadcast rights after the ESPN deal is concluded because Netflix might be waiting in the wings. They already have a relationship with WWE. That could be a pretty interesting time to see where UFC ends up after their contract expires.
Yeah, 100%.
But anyway, I mean, thoughts on this fight? You think it's just going to be Peyton Talbot walking through?
I hope not because like I want to see something out of Peyton that makes me like believe like okay, he's ready to go to war and fight for something bigger than just another prelim card against a guy where you're a minus 1500 favorite. Like I don't know. Like I don't want to say like the minus 1500 favorite Peyton Talbot. I don't want to see you go in here and almost lose, but like it's got to be competitive. I'm tired of seeing you mop people already, and it's only been two or three. Like that's already enough, to be honest. So
Well, I mean, we had a similar situation with Bo Nickel, and Bo Nickel got the jump up and he did win that fight, but it showed a dramatic difference in the levels as far as certain elements of his games go, or certain elements of his game goes. So I want to see out of Peyton Talbot a performance that a makes me want to see him fight higher competition beyond this because he is slowly ascending as people rightfully think he should be. But B, that he's going to be able to hold his own once he finally gets the actual legitimate shot. Because as Anakin is saying in the chat, shout out to Anakin, of course, Talbot should get a ranked fighter after this. If he walks through him, he absolutely should. But then the real test is going to come.
I mean, listen, maybe it just never does. We've seen a lot of undefeated fighters. They get very high in the rankings before they end up losing. So Peyton might have a while to go. He's very young, very impressive, well-rounded skill set, and obviously he can finish people. So anything's possible.
Yeah, and I think that this should be a pretty well lock for him. I mean, that minus 1,500 price tag is speaking all that you need to know right there. But yeah, we'll see. I want to see him do it in impressive fashion.
Okay.
Moving on, we've got Jalton Almeida versus Sergey Spivak. I know you're a big fan of Sergey Spivak.
Honestly, before we moved on to the fight, I looked at the plus 340 and I thought, honestly, Sergey, I wouldn't put it on you, but that's not a bad dog because Jailton sometimes is a goofball. And fortunately in this matchup, you have two dudes who are not great at striking. Sergey's definitely better in my opinion. He got spooked against Tsarukyan, but his striking is definitely better than Jailton because Jailton just sucks. Like he just refuses to ever like practice it, I guess. And so the wrestling could get interesting because Spivak apparently can sub off his back. He can just do anything now. So the grappling might get interesting. People think he's gonna get ragdolled by Almeida. This might be another conclusion that I come to where I say Jailton Almeida might do better at light heavyweight. If Sergey Spivak is the dude that makes you look human, you might have another thing coming for you. So I just think this will be interesting. That plus 340 is speaking to me a little bit.
Fair enough. I want to continue to put faith in Jalton Almeida. It might be misplaced at this point. In fact, I would say that it's definitely misplaced at this point. But I think that you're exactly right. This is one of those fights that is like, if you cannot win this fight, then a reassessment is definitely necessary. The fight with Curtis Blades, I think, could be chalked up to some, I don't want to call it a fluke because it wasn't a fluke, but just poor management of your positioning, because it basically got caught with those side of the head elbows that ended up being the TKO. Don't let something like that happen here. I do think that he is going to be the better grappler out of the two of them, even though Spivak has proven that he's not super slouchy in that department. So this is kind of a make or break for Almeida at heavyweight for all of those reasons. And I want to believe, because heavyweight is such a sparse division to begin with, that it really is going to be very sad if we lose Jalton Almeida as somebody who's anywhere in the conversation.
And we're right on the bridge of the narrative. It's like, are we going to see Jailton rise the rankings where we question like, oh, that was just that one fluke loss? Or are we going to sit here and watch Jailton Almeida spiral out because Sergey Spivak beats him? And then we always talk about like, I mean, we could have seen it coming, like, so stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah, Jalton Almeida is always going, or potentially would become a great what if in this sport, in my opinion, because you could always look back and be like, what if Jalton Almeida just had hands?
Yeah.
What if he just had striking? It's the only thing he's missing.
And it's unfortunate to his case. It's like when he does lose, he's somewhat gonna be memed. Like I think he's one of those fighters that does get memed when he loses, whether it's a knockout. He hasn't lost much, of course, but if he loses to Sergey Spivak, it's like you're getting memed to shit. You just got beat by the fucking polar bear. Like, so I don't know. Jailton Almeida's in a hard position because I feel like while he's not a superstar, at least the people who know ball, we have high hopes for Jailton. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and that's why I'm riding with him on this one for that exact reason. But I do agree with you entirely that Spivak not a terrible dog in this one either. He might go on the underdog parlay too.
Sadly, not a terrible dog. I hate to even say it, but I do. He is coming around on me. I'm not gonna lie. Moldova, shout out. I might have to get a flag if he wins this. Oh, I'm getting a flag.
All right, hold him to it, everybody. He says he's getting a flag if Spivak wins this fight.
Easy.
All right, moving on. Zachary Reese versus Azamat Bekoev.
It's short notice fill-in.
Yeah, I was going to say it did not sound familiar. Hard to say, obviously, for that reason. I mean, I guess we can at least take a look.
From the LFA.
Yeah, an LFA guy. 5-0 in his last 5, so all LFA fights and one in an octagon. So
yeah, but the thing that I have to say is we should know by now, after what we've seen out of Zachary Reese in his last performances, whoever this dude is, the 6'1" frame, we know Zach Reese is huge for this division.
Yes.
So whether Azmat's a 6'1" middleweight, he's gonna not, Zachary Reese is gonna be huge compared to him because he's a normal middleweight kind of deal. Zachary Reese has got power, he's got hands, he's fast, he's athletic. Like, He's got good takedown defense. It's really hard to say what he does wrong, and that's good coming into a fight where, you know, you don't know what your opponent's doing because they also don't know what you're capable of. But on the other end, it's like Azmat might take the route of just grappling and holding him down all fight. We don't know.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting.
Well, one aspect of it that I was not aware of, but does play a pretty big part here is Anakin coming
Yeah,
through with the facts. Uh,
terrible.
Bekoev went to a split decision with Dylan Budka. That should tell you all you need to know there. So yeah, I mean, I got to ride with Zachary Reese on this one, just off of all of those elements. But you know, we'll see. Like you said, he could be some dude that has a lot of tricks up the sleeve that we're not aware of that he's been showing off in the LFA, and this is your shot, buddy.
100%. I mean, listen, he's a Russian guy on the card with a lot of other Russian guys. I'm sure he might be somewhere in the realm of knowing camps. Maybe he's on the way to knowing something. Maybe Zach Reese is the first victim. We don't even have the
Sure.
line yet for him. We don't know who's the favorite. It might be a big favorite for Zach and big
Yeah,
dog. So
it's a good point. All right. And the last of the regular prelims here, Bogdan Guzkov fighting Billy Elikana. Uh, Elikana sounds familiar, but I don't
oh,
remember.
what the
Yeah, he's a
fuck?
dude coming off of PFL and LXF, it looks like. So, uh,
Interesting.
yeah, not.
Goose job by KO. Fuck it.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, you know, again, just name recognition alone kind of takes it to Guzkov, who it seems odd that they're giving him a an unknown guy, but I mean, because he did he lose? Maybe there's a
He
fight that
got
I'm not
he got
remembering.
subbed by Uzdemir. Yeah, he got subbed
Yeah,
by
but I
Uzdemir.
mean,
That's
on a
crazy.
2-fight win streak, and one of those
True.
being Ryan Spann, I mean, like you'd think that he wouldn't be getting that type of a matchup, but you know,
True.
fair enough.
All
Uh,
right.
so Grant Dawson and Diego Ferreira
I
on
just
the early
need
prelims.
Yeah, I just need Grant to perform, maybe get a finish again. If you get 2 finishes in a row, I'll take back some stuff I said about the first one, you being very boring in the beginning of that fight. Just know that I will be watching you, and anytime you do grappling, I got a timer set before you start striking, dude, because I'm bringing it to the show.
That's right. Well, I mean, you know, the dude has to go out there and perform. He's got a wife with an ass like a dump truck back home who
That
needs
you
to be
can
taken
bounce a
care of.
quarter off of.
That's right. You know, you got to make sure that you're taking care of the lady, my man. So go out there and win your fight for her, sir.
Yep.
And I would tend to believe that Grant Dawson takes that fight. Um, Moving on to a fight that I'm very surprised is this far down the pecking order here. Carol Hosa versus Eileen Perez. I'm sorry, brother. I think that this is going to be a pretty bad loss for your girl here.
You're actually ridiculous because it's gonna be so easy. Like Eileen Perez with her newfound gift of just laying on top of other women. She's gonna get this done easy. She's just gonna rack up control time. All she does is go to decision. She's got one sub against the Shevchenko clone number 3, and then all the other ones she just lays on top of people and racks up control time and strikes. I think I see no difference here. I don't know why plus 225 dog against somebody with 6 losses. It's like, why are you confident in somebody who's lost so many times?
Because she throws hands, brother. Carol Hosa is a scrapper, my dude. She's not one of these
Yeah,
timid fighters. She, timid lady fighter. Like she's gonna go out there and take the fight to her.
Yeah, but I think Eileen is just gonna truck her over and do what she does best. But I could be wrong. I think Eileen really has this in the bag. I might put just big money down on Eileen, just
All
straight.
right.
I mean
Uh,
that plus 225 dog. I mean,
oh, hey, no, do your thing, brother. I mean, that's yeah, I mean, we'll be back next Monday to see how it all shakes out.
we will be back next Monday to see how it shakes out.
But yeah, so all right, I'm going with Carol Hosa on that one. But Chase is thinking otherwise. You decide in the chat who you want to rock with on that.
Okay.
And yeah,
Next.
and actually,
Oh yeah.
just to close it out though, real quick, this is certainly the fight that makes me a Carol Hosa fan. The war that she had with Irene Aldana, that fight was amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan for life. But moving on, Rinya Nakamura versus Muin Gafarov. This should be a slam dunk for Nakamura.
You think?
Absolutely, Muin
Okay.
Gafarov is
A bum.
yeah. I mean, I've never been impressed by him. I think that he won his last fight, but I was not impressed then. Even yeah, he won his last fight versus Kang. I'm not. No, I have not seen anything out of Muin Gafarov that has been anything worth looking at, except for that odd patch of hair that he has on his back.
Yeah, the last memorable thing that happened, just because you clicked on his little thing, is that he got
Oh, yeah.
subbed by Saeed Nurmagomedov, and that was so long ago. Saeed hasn't even fought since. So
There
crazy.
you go. He took that win and rode off into the sunset, huh?
Hey, must be good enough for him.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm rocking with Nakamura on that one. Ricky Tercios versus Bernardo Sopai.
I
I
think this
mean,
is a banger right here.
this
I like
could be.
SoPi.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sopai is definitely game. Tercios has a lot to prove after the loss to Raul Rosas. Now made himself look like a bit of a jackass in the lead up to that fight. So I think he needs to regain some ground with the fans, at least this one anyway.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I think that this has a lot of banger potential. This is a really decent early prelims, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, this is a tough one. I will tentatively go with Sopai, but Tercios has been a guy that has been able to surprise in the past, and is a dude that takes his fighting very seriously. So I want to believe that that level of dedication will show.
Yeah, Tercios might be one of these dudes who can derail a decent prospect. Not saying Bernardo's not coming off of a loss. Albania. That is that what this is? That's actually pretty cool.
Yep.
Bernardo is somebody who I would. When I look at him and I get the vibe from him, he just seems like a dude who wants to fight. Like getting knocked off by Ricky Tercios is probably not. You know, he's probably not thinking that this is life or death. Like he's going to get another fight after it, hopefully, whatever. But the way that he presents himself, he seems like a fighter. Like it's not really championship level mentality. It's just I'm here to get paid and fight kind of deal.
Could be. So, yeah, I don't know. It's really one of those ones that I think it depends a lot on how they look on the night of. It's going to
Yeah.
be a bit of an eye test for that one. But both guys coming in with some decent reputations, I would say, based on previous performances. Of course, Anakin mentioning the knockout that Sopai had. So
No, that he got
that
against him.
that
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's what I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
so, it's, yeah, you never wanna be on the opposite end of that highlight, but,
He took plenty of time off though, so he should be good to go. That's a good sign at least. He didn't jump right back into it. So
yeah, so, both coming off of losses, somebody needs to win.
true. I mean, whoever gets 2 losses in a row, I mean, you're just getting closer to your way out. So you might
Yeah,
want to pick up the pace.
yeah, exactly, so I'm gonna tentatively go with Tercios on that one. And then finally, starting it off, is Taguero Ulanbekov versus Clayton Carpenter. Clay Carpenter there, undefeated still. And Ulanbekov, were we just talking about him in the rankings? No, that
Yes, he
was
is in the rankings. Yeah, I think he's 15.
so. How is that the first fight on the early prelims is a ranked fighter?
Because Father's Plan does what happened. Like, he pulls through. Olenbekov's getting this one. He's part of it.
I mean, okay, well, Clay Carpenter undefeated though. You don't think that that's going to maintain, huh?
Honestly, I didn't really remember him until I looked at his record, and then I'm like, oh well, I did watch this just in October.
Yeah,
So
I was going
how
to
did I
say, yeah.
forget? But hey, I mean, shout out to him. If he pulls out, he does. But I think Ulanbekov has got this one. I think he'll wrestle and maybe get a sub probably.
Well, all right. I mean, we'll see what happens there. We will be back, of course, next Monday to talk about each and every one of these fights that we just did a little preview of here at UFC 311. So I will be doing a watch along for this event with my buddy, the Vitz King, right here on the channel. That is youtube.com/@Yama Show. And Chase, I know that you can tell them where they can find you.
Them boys can find me live streaming every Saturday not every Saturday that the UFC is on. I will be there on youtube.com/@CP Smalls. On Twitter, sometimes you'll catch me trying to get Minty Betts' attention at creative PARTIN. And yeah, that's where I'll be hanging out.
Absolutely. Make sure you follow my boy. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Yama Show as well. Hopefully, going to have some new content out on the channel this week. I know Chase will probably be getting some prediction videos out and some other content as well. So make sure that you are subscribed to both channels. And as I said, we will be back on Monday to go over these fights. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, everybody. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of your week. And as always, fight on.